here tonight. I'll call the meeting to order. All of our members are present, but Mr. Wagner is out of the room at the moment.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just wanted to announce that the board did meet in an informational session immediately prior to this meeting regarding personnel and budgeting around personnel.
All right, so we're going to begin tonight with some student recognitions. First, we were going to recognize Ethan Albright for his grand champion of the North Museum Science Fair, but he is on a college visit right now and is unable to get back in time, so we will honor him at our next meeting, so we'll be able to do that. We also, which I'll come up here now, I'm excited to share, we have several National Merit finalists. As you know, we have honored students who have been commended students and then semifinalists, and now we actually have students who are reached the entire level all the way across, looking at the country, as National Merit finalists. This is extremely hard to do, and we're talking about a tiny fraction percentage of students across this country. And so Ethan Albright is one of those individuals, and again, we will honor him. But then is Nathaniel here? Come on out. Ty is unable to be here. Mila? And Andrew. Okay, so we have Nathaniel. Claudius Geiger, is that correct? Yep. Did I say correct? All right. So on behalf of the school district, congratulations on achieving the National Merit Scholarship finalist, and now you are eligible for potential significant scholarships for post-secondary education. So on behalf of the district, congratulations. Thank you for what you do. Would you be interested in sharing potential plans for next year beyond high school? Any thoughts yet?
I plan to go to Millersville University and major in math.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. We're really proud of you. Thank you for what you do. And then we were able to get a picture. Yep. And so we're going to publish that online, but you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. That's up to you. Okay, you're good. Thank you. Honored to recognize you. All right, so we'll get to our other National Merit finalists. Tonight, I am also very excited to share, we have two students. Is Reshma and Mayday here? Mayday, are you? Oop, come on over. So we have two phenomenal sisters, entrepreneurs, here with us tonight. They are first place champions in the 2026 Trust Bank Entrepreneurs Game Plan Challenge, which was co-sponsored by the Eagles and Educational Partners of Science of Sports. These two amazing individuals were among 5 groups selected for a final competition, and their submission was unique for 2 reasons, is what was reported. They were the only students from a public school who qualified, and they were the only group whose idea for a nonprofit venture called Tech Buddies, which was inspired by their grandparents. So before we jump into any other information here, I do want to share that one of the quotes regarding the two of you was that you were so poised with professionalism, your analysis of cost and marketing, and your unique concept far surpassed anything that the judges saw for the day. And you both exhibited diligence and grace as you started this business, according to Chris Sanusa, one of our teachers. And you follow through at all times and display that grace that's truly needed to put customers first. And they are the second winners now from Hemphill School District at this event. So let's give both of these amazing entrepreneurs a round of applause. And before we do the certificates and pictures and whatnot, can you tell us a little bit about Tech Buddies and help everyone understand what it is and kind of where you came up with that idea?
Yeah.
Great.
So Tech Buddies is a social entrepreneurship that my sister Reshma and I founded. It focuses on giving tech support to senior citizens around the community because we recognize that that is a very prevalent issue in today's modern world. As many services move online, seniors are being left behind because they don't have those skills to use their technology properly. So we are using high school students' knowledge on technology that they are basically handed at a very young age, and we're implementing that into the lives of senior citizens and really helping them in their daily lives.
That's really wonderful. I love it.
Any questions from any of our board members?
Have you enrolled local students here from the high school to be your volunteers?
Yes, we've gotten students from various school districts. I think we are currently at 5 school districts, and we've gotten a total of 70 volunteers, so we are looking to expand that as well.
Is there anything that you need from us as you scale this? I mean, any support that you need from us?
So one thing that we are actually looking into doing as we expand our Tech Buddies program is looking into hosting more community-wide events. So right now we're only hosting these Tech Buddies sessions at senior living facilities because they have the facility space for us to host them at. But right now we are looking into hosting community-wide events for senior citizens that aren't living in assisted living facilities. So if there would be any way for you to provide a community space to host these events, that would be really beneficial for us.
I'm sure Mr. Vimorsky would be happy to talk with you about that.
Yeah, thank you.
I was just going to say, I work in the healthcare space, and I happen to be in the long-term senior living space. And so I am intrigued by that because we often get questions about how do I set up an email, and they don't know how to update an app. And I'm not being unkind, but there are some basic skills that are missing. And we have a tech team, but they don't have enough support to keep up with the number of needs. Sometimes they don't even know what they are. So I'm intrigued. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have the district. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're so proud.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
If we can go over there and get a picture, that'd be great.
Yeah.
You go either way, your choice. And if, Mom, if you want to come up here and get a picture as well. And that concludes our student recognition, so I'm going to turn it over to our student council.
So unfortunately today, none of the officers were able to show up, so us representatives are going to have to take over for today. A student council event that's coming up is officer elections. So next Monday, we're going to host an election event for the new president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, club relations manager, and social media manager. And from that, we'll know who the new people are for those roles. And then on Friday of that week, we're going to have a student council summit where we're going to host an event in one of the LGs where I think it's Manheim Township, Ephrata, Penn Manor, and Conestoga Valley are going to come to our school, and they're just going to know the things that our student council does, and we're just going to share ideas and see how we can benefit off of each other. I think that's all.
Any questions for our student council? All right, and Mr. Williams and myself will actually be at the student council event and be able to speak to all of the students who are coming here around student voice, connecting to the district and school boards, as well as assisting in the work that they're doing around creating the culture that they want to see within schools. So thank you for joining us as well. Okay, and with that, turn it back to you, Mrs. Brady, for the agenda.
We're moving on for the approval of the agenda. Is there a need to amend the agenda? Any additions or deletions? Mr. Keenan?
I'd like to request for item 12E as an echo be voted upon separately.
All right. Any other additions or deletions? All right, with item 12E being voted on separately, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Keener. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 9-0. Better use the glasses for this one. Next, we're looking at approval of the minutes from the regular board meeting held on March 24th, as well as the Buildings and Grounds Finance Committee meetings held on March 24th. Is there a motion to approve those minutes as presented?
Motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Eshelman. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Do we have any residents' requests to address the board this evening? None? Okay, thank you. Moving on then to the superintendent's report.
Thanks. Again, good evening. First, it was great to honor our students in a variety of ways. Couple updates regarding the high school project. I know that there was a request at a previous meeting for regular daily updates. If I don't get the update, it's not, there's nothing else to update. So that's why you haven't been getting a lot of them. What I put in board news and or send out subsequently, those are the only updates I have. So I do just want to kind of make sure everybody is updated. With regards to the transportation study and the miscommunications that occurred between ELA and the traffic engineer, the traffic study was submitted to the township's traffic engineer. Subsequently, the traffic engineer sent back a bunch of requests. ELA was able to answer all of those requests and resubmit back to the township engineer with the exception of one item, and that is a traffic count out here at Bank and Church. In the initial traffic study, a 4-hour count, which is the requirement, was completed. And that indicated that there is a need for a light once the project is underway and completed for us to be responsible to put a light there. However, in part of the traffic engineer's requirement is PennDOT then requires a 12-hour count. And so that 12-hour count was not an initial requirement, but then came back as a requirement because the township's traffic engineer doesn't want to get surprised later to find out that it's not needed, and then we have to revamp traffic plans on the campus. So that traffic count is currently underway. We were able to get permission to resubmit everything back to the township engineer except for that count and the analysis of that count. That should be completed by the end of next week and back to the traffic engineer. At a meeting we had, the traffic engineer indicated that they should be able to get through everything else, and as long as everything else is good and those counts come back, we should be able to make the May Planning Commission meeting at the township and then the subsequent Board of Supervisors meeting at the township in May as well. So those are signs, as long as all of the traffic work is acceptable to the township's traffic engineer. In the meeting, I specifically asked the question, if the 12-hour count comes back and says a light is not warranted, are the subsequent patterns then subject to approval by the township? And they said yes, and I said, and if you're not happy with it, then do we have to come up with alternatives? And they said yes. So ELA, their traffic engineers, have come up with alternatives. I've asked to see those so that we could view, is it something that's even we think remotely possible, or can we do this? So I'm waiting to get those, but that was a question that was asked, so that we'll see for that. With regards to the stormwater management plan, the Conservation District has reviewed the subsequent submission. They, instead of sending a new letter back, they sent an email back, which in their world, we're being told is a good sign, with just a few things that they feel can be addressed through a subsequent email. That I instructed ELA to get done this week, because the deadline that the Conservation District put on was May 15th. I don't want the ELA to wait till May 15th. That will significantly delay, because after the Conservation District, it has to go to DEP. We did get notification from DEP that the sewer plan was exempt and not needed for their review. We initially were a little excited and thought that the exempt letter focused on the entire project, and then it was clarified it was just the sewer. But that's a positive step. We have a meeting on Friday with regards to the code officials. So we are trying to navigate any potential future issues ahead of all of the subsequent approvals. So we'll be discussing egress out of the Buchanan Gym in the event. We have a large event there because construction of the new part of the high school will be just on the other side of the exit doors on the east of Buchanan Gym, and they will not be able to be emergency exits. So we need an alternative plan. So we're working with code officials to talk through that plan. As you know, one of the pieces of this project was separating the Performing Arts Center, getting that connected to all of the, off the steam and completely separate. We have permission from the Conservation District to do that. However, that work goes right through the baseball field, and we can't have that work done if we don't have a new field for our baseball team to go to. But hot off the press, I'm happy to report there is a potential solution that was shared with me at 4:20 this afternoon that is being evaluated to see if they could do the line trenching and the connection from this building behind us over to the PAC without interfering with the actual field itself. We may need to use the foul ball area, but that's not the field, and we'll be able to grow grass back. So it potentially could be a viable solution and maybe even save a little bit of dollars. Fingers crossed, we will see. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up, but we need a little hope with this. So I'll keep you posted as soon as I hear anything, but I did ask for a very detailed written piece with 100% guarantee that we're not going to have any issues if we do this, because I don't want to get caught again. So that's what I have from an update standpoint. Just wanted to share that with you. If this is a viable plan, we will be asking the board to approve, because we already did the bids for the PAC project. We need to get going on that project and get everything approved so that we can turn the work this summer and into the fall and have the PAC ready for us back at the school in the beginning of December. And so we will need board approval on a series of items regarding the PAC project and pre-purchasing some of the equipment that will go on top of the PAC roof from HVAC, whatnot, because there's a long lead time for that. And so all of that will come to the board if this is a viable option. So I hope to know something by the end of the week.
Great.
So, and that covers that piece. The district calendar of events are there, and our April enrollment report is attached for your review. Any questions for me?
That buffer between the end of this week and May 15th, is that?
I would like to say that the deadline is this Friday.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really informative. All right, moving along to my president's report. Again, I just wanted to extend my they're not here anymore. Congratulations, well, yeah, Nathaniel left too, to Nathaniel, Meta, and Reshma. Just really proud of them and all that their families and teachers and mentors have done to help them along their path. And in advance of our Ed policy meeting tonight, I just want to thank Doug and the kindergarten exploratory team. I know you guys have been working really hard over the last 6 months and even before that. And we are looking forward to that presentation and what it means for Hempfield in the future. Along the lines, Karen's not here, but Lori, pass along both of you. Thank you for all you are doing. For those that don't know, they are diligently going through thousands of line items to ensure accuracy for Hempfield's budgeting, and we know now that it's very important that you do that, so thank you very much. Reminder for board members that if you are interested, this was in board notes, but if you're interested in being one of the PSBA delegates to the delegate assembly in November, please let somebody know so that we know if there's 3, if there's more than 3. Yes.
Madam President, is that happening not in conjunction with the PSBA meeting?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so it's not going to be up at Kalahari, it's going to
No,
be...
it's at Cumberland Valley, I believe.
Okay, so separate,
It's
not
on
like
a
it was last
Saturday
year.
at Cumberland
Okay.
Valley. Yep. Any other questions on that one? All right, just for efficiency, if you want to let Erin know, since she's our PSBA rep, if you're interested in that, and then we will vote on those delegates in June. Also, for the public's knowledge, the board has set a date of June 11th for a PSBA facilitated conversation and training around long-range planning and vision and goals for the board. We are also undertaking research right now for the selection or development of a better or more robust administrative evaluation tool so we can meet our annual obligation as far as those evaluations. And we will be completing the current year's evaluation cycle between the end of May and the end of June. And I think that's it. Any questions on any of that? All right. Moving on to representative and adjunct reports, starting with Lancaster County Career and Technology Center, Mr. Keener.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. The JOC met on March 26th at Willow Street. It was a routine meeting in all respects. Probably the most interesting thing is the CTC is beginning a feasibility study process. We are in the process of identifying architects and consultants to assist with that, to address some longer-term capital needs. More to come on that as things evolve. The next meeting will be April 23rd, that's next Thursday, at Brownstown.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Wagner, Hempfield Rec Center.
Yes, so we met on the 25th of March most recently, where we had a consultant come in and talk to the group for a significant amount of time in length, actually. It was really cool, really fun to listen to her and engage with her and watch her presentation, where she talked around how to maximize and enhance efforts around with our strategic planning efforts. How do you build a capital campaign? How do you make sure that your marketing efforts are being maximized as much as possible? How to engage the community, et cetera, as we think about things from building and developing for the rec center. So she was fantastic to listen to, and that was literally those meetings are usually about 60 minutes. This went for an hour and 40, give or take, an hour and 45 minutes. So, but I could have gone for 3 hours. Now I'd have been totally on the edge of my seat.
Right.
It was really cool. So, a lot of good takeaways. So,
Excellent. Mr. Williams, did you want to add anything? All good? All right. And standing committee reports. I'll start with Buildings and Grounds. I think much of what was covered at our last Buildings and Grounds meeting related to the high school project update, Mr. Bromerski has already covered and gone further with fresh updates. The other thing that we saw a presentation on was OSIP, which is Owner-Controlled Insurance Programs, options for the high school construction project. That was an informational presentation, which was fascinating as well, things that you didn't know existed and that you didn't know you needed to know, but now we do. And no decision-making has gone through on that at this point, but things to keep in mind for the future. Next, I will go back to Mr. Wagner for the Finance Committee report.
fantastic. Thank you. Let's keep on throwing things back and forth to each other.
Yeah, it's
Take a
fun. Yeah,
game
sure.
of tennis, Ms. Brady. So our finance meeting happened the exact same evening as the Buildings and Grounds, as normal. That evening we talked about extracurricular programs, which was presented by Mr. Ryan Landis, specifically with respect to junior high athletic programs, junior high girls wrestling, and junior high girls volleyball. We talked about the rationale for the request, what it would bring in terms of a feeder system for those sports, just the pros and cons of bringing those programs to the district, as well as expenditures that would come along with those programs. That was also on the agenda for this evening, so we'll stay tuned for that. We also had a budget update by Mrs. Karen Hall, including a budget overview with flat state funding and no tax increase, a revenue overview of Act 1 index for the 26-27 school year, et cetera. Just a really good, strong overview of where we stand financially. And then additionally, we talked through a few of the contracts that you will find on the agenda for this evening's approval, so you can take a look at those as needed. We'll be voting on those later on tonight. That is it for me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, number 9 on the agenda we'll start with personnel action items. Personnel A, approval of personnel action items. Is there a motion to approve personnel action items 9A, 1 through 8 as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Wagner, is that you? Okay. I just
Yeah,
didn't know.
yes,
Okay,
so,
I'm sorry.
yes. Yeah.
Because we're doing this thing back and
It's
forth.
true.
Okay.
You do it, I can just do it.
I just wasn't sure who I heard there. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Linton. Any discussion on that?
Yes, before we vote on this, I'd like to speak generally and briefly about an item that was supposed to be on the personnel report, but which is now not. There was, as the board is aware, a tentative recommendation to fill a senior administrative position in the district. That recommendation was then withdrawn because of what may or may not have been a miscommunication about the terms and specifics of the offer, or what may or may not have been a change of heart on the part of the preferred candidate. Regardless of what occurred, it illustrates yet again an example of why we need to get our HR house in order. And there have been issues in HR for, frankly, as long as I've been on the board, and some have told me even dating back to before that. We have good people. We have experienced people leading the department. We have experienced people, good people working in the department. But it is clear that there continues to be some level of administrative dysfunction. And it impacts our ability to recruit and retain staff. It impacts our ability to serve the employees that we currently have. And I would strongly encourage the administration working with the board to address this in a full and strategic way.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other comments?
I just want to add that our team, as Mr. Keener noted, we have a new HR team, and they are doing an outstanding job. And we are very pleased with our team that's down there. I want to say down there because that's where their area is. And they're very dedicated, passionate, and very excited for the work that they're doing. So we are very pleased and proud of the work they're doing, and I do want to recognize and honor them. And individuals can change their mind in terms of positions. It happens regularly, and we hire people, and sometimes they don't show up. And that's not HR's fault. Our team works hard through that process, and so I think we have to respect people's decisions, and we have to move forward and find candidates that are excited for positions. So we will keep doing that, and we'll keep the board updated.
Thank you. So we have a first and a second. Is there any other comment or discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving personnel action items 9A, 1 through 8 as presented? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries 9-0. The next item is a happy one, administrative position, approval to employ Chad Riddle as principal at Roarstown Elementary School, effective date to be determined provisionally according to federal and state law regulations, compensated in accordance with the salary rate ranges for 2026 and 2027. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Linton. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Small. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries 9-0, and my understanding is
Mr. Riddle is here
in.
this evening. Congratulations.
Just want to say thank you guys so much for this opportunity. I am in a great district currently, and I've had so many blessings, being there. This has been a lifelong dream of me since going into education to be a principal of my own building, leading my own staff. And so I think the best words I can say is gratitude and grateful for this opportunity, and incredibly excited to hit the ground running and just make those connections with just the kids, the families, and of course the staff. And I look forward to the next chapter of my career being part of Hempfield.
Welcome to Hempfield. We're excited
Thank
to
you
have you.
guys.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Sure, I'm not getting ahead of myself here. All right, next thing we have approval of finance action items B through D. B would be our contracts as presented. C is the Lancaster 11 and IU 13 general operating budget for 26-27. And D are the extracurricular programs of junior high girls wrestling and junior high girls volleyball program and team. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Best. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that carries 9-0. Next, we move on to policy action items. We have the second reading of board policies. These have been discussed at the previous education policy meetings. We have 103.1, non-discrimination for qualified students with disabilities. 105.2, exemption from instruction. 204, attendance. 218.1, weapons. 706, property records. And 708, lending of equipment and books. Is there a motion to approve the second reading of those board policies as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Small. A second?
Second.
I think I heard Mr. Keener first on that one. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 9-0. All right, other action items. This is where we are breaking out item E and keep bumping that with my pencil. Approval of other action items B through D. B would be additional contracted transportation staff. C would be approval of school dentists, Melissa Crognell, Amar Patel, and Thomas Sardinia. And the Lancaster County Academy Board Representative, approval for Ms. Small to be our district representative to the LCA Board. Okay, so that's all of those. Is there a motion to approve action items B through D?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Linton. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Eshelman. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. And lastly, we have the approval of the legal agreement as presented. A reminder to the board that this is a confidential nature of this agreement, and also with the understanding that approval would come with corrections to the pagination errors prior to signing. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Small. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Linton. Discussion. Yes, Mr. Keener.
Okay. I oppose this agreement for one basic reason. The district is entering into this agreement before we know what actually happened, okay? There was an incident, we can all agree on that. We don't know what actually transpired and what liability, if any, the district has. There is a process in the legal realm called discovery, and discovery is designed to suss out the truth or lack thereof of factual allegations contained in complaints. And when you rush to settle based only on allegations, that is, naked statements that are untested by the adversarial process, it is not a good use of taxpayer money. It sets a bad precedent, and it is not generally good stewardship of public resources. So for the sole reason that we don't know what occurred and the allegations were never tested through the discovery process, I cannot support this settlement. And I request a roll call vote.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Does Carissa do this?
All right, excuse me. Caleb Best,
Aye.
Judy Brady,
Aye.
Megan Eshelman,
Aye.
Grant Keener,
No.
Kate Linton,
Aye.
Aaron Small,
Aye.
Patrick Wagner,
Aye.
Mackay Williams,
Aye.
Justin Wogobuth.
No.
That motion carries 7-2. And I believe that was the last item on our agenda for this meeting. Am I correct on that? Okay. And so now I need a motion to adjourn this meeting to begin the Ed Policy, Personnel, and Legal meeting. And I think given the brief nature of this one, we can go right into the next. Is that okay? Okay. So is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Best. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. This meeting is adjourned.
Ready to start? You wanna come up?
Oh, is everybody here that you need?
Yeah, do we need to flip-flop?
Dr. Musser, is everybody here that you need to start?
Dr. Dandridge.
Oh, Dr. Dandridge.
Dr. Dandridge. It's okay.
I've done that before in my life, too. You're good? I look at the name tag that I can see.
No. You want to take the kitty?
I'm going to call to order the Education and Programs Committee meeting. There are no residents' requests to address the board. And do we need to do that now, or do we move right into?
Yeah, I think we do. Hang on, I'm not there yet, sorry. I'd like to amend the agenda and remove item 4G for tonight's agenda.
Was that 4B?
What's that?
G is in.
4G.
When we're doing with it?
We're going to move it to another meeting, so.
Okay, table it.
Table.
Can I
There
ask,
you
are you willing to share why?
Tab wants to move it to May, and there was an update on PSBA that he'd like to have as part of
That's
discussion.
fair.
for
That
May.
makes sense. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay, what do you need?
So we're tabling it until the May policy meeting.
Do we need to vote?
Could I get we need to,
Yes, there needs to be a motion
does
to
that need to be?
table.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry.
Motion carries 9-0,
Thank you.
and we're all good.
Point of order, we now need to approve the agenda following the motion to table.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion.
Thank you.
And a
Kate.
second?
Oh, second. Sorry, I thought you were seconding. I second that.
Who was first and who was second? I don't know, sorry. Kate, you were first?
Who was the first?
Judy?
Judy.
Judy,
And then-
sorry. And then Kate.
And then Kate.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0. Now we get to move on to kindergarten. All right, Dr. Dandridge, let's do it, and everybody.
So this evening, we have a presentation on the Full Day Kindergarten Exploration Committee and the work that they've engaged in over the past 6 months. As I have shared with all of you, this is a lengthy presentation, so we will do our best to keep it moving along. But one of the things that I always ask is if you can hold questions. Did not think it was fair to ask you to hold them all the way to slide 57 tonight. So we do have at least 4 natural spots at the end of sections that we're going to stop, see if there's any questions on those sections, and engage in some conversation before moving into the next section. I hope that works for this evening's presentation, but just thought I'd share that on the front end. All right, so our agenda for this evening, we're going to talk about some assumptions that we're starting this committee work with, some of the background about what got us here today, the working committees that we had working on different projects, some survey data we completed, some individual conversations that the committee engaged in, some costs, options, and next steps. On the assumption side, so first things first, I just want to make sure we define a couple of our acronyms on the front end, right? So FDK, if you see that throughout this presentation, is referring to a full day kindergarten program, HDK, half day kindergarten. And then we currently have our EDK classrooms as well. They are not special ed, but they are a full day experience for our students based on their kindergarten readiness. So when you see EDK, that is the current iteration of that program. And finally, we also have Diagnostic K kindergarten classrooms. They're not always mentioned when we talk about full day kindergarten because they are a special ed program. They are already a full day program. I don't want anything in this presentation, because they are not included in that conversation, to think that the district is looking to eliminate DK. We are very proud of the programming that is happening in those classrooms. And one of the assumptions here in the presentation is that we are looking to continue with both of those classrooms going forward. So even if they're not listed in our totals, they are assumed to be there. Another assumption that we are working on is we currently have 3 preschool classrooms across the district. We partner with Head Start, pre-K counts programs. 2 of them are at LIC, one is at East Pete. It has been a strong commitment and partnership over the years. We are building this plan with the assumption that we are continuing that partnership and those 3 classrooms. Yes, they do take up space that we could use for kindergarten classrooms, but they bring a tremendous amount of value and help with the readiness for students that are coming to those kindergarten classes in the future. Thought that was an important program to partnership to continue. And finally, when we're looking at projections for this committee, one of the things that we have discussed is because we currently only have a half-day kindergarten setup, we don't know how many of our families would actually be in our kindergarten programming if we offered full day. We do not have an exact count of what that would look like. So for the sake of conversation, to give us a starting point, a place to look, our best estimate prediction here is going to be 60 additional students We went back and looked at some of our traditional increases from kindergarten to first grade, projected that. So we said it would fall around the 60 range. For the purposes of tonight's exercises, you can count on that as 10 students per elementary building that has kindergarten. Yes, I 100% know that a larger building like LPC likely will see more than 10, and maybe our smaller buildings, elementary buildings like Royerstown might have slightly less than 10. But for projection's sake, so that we have a conversation starter, that's the assumption that the committee is working off of, and what you'll see in our numbers and our slides today. All right. Any questions on those assumptions? Okay. So let me just quickly take you through the background, how we got here to the most recent state of conversations about full-day kindergarten at Hempfield. Obviously, these conversations started long before 2024. However, they've resurfaced over the past couple years. And in September 2024, we had held an informational session with the Education and Programs Committee at that time with just some basic starting points. What would it look like to bring full-day kindergarten to Hempfield? There were projections, there was use of facilities, costs, things like that. That committee then asked us to prepare more information to start sharing publicly, which is what we did in January of 2025. That was our first public presentation in this last iteration, where we attempted to answer some of the questions and answers. We had, at that time, presented 3 options to expand our current kindergarten offerings at Hempfield, with a recommendation of expanding with an EDK classroom in all 6 of our elementaries. After a couple months of review, that was then brought back in March of 2025 for a full presentation, which led to the vote and led to our expansion of the kindergarten program, moving our EDK programming from the 30 students that were currently being served at Centerville to a total of 90 across the district, and all of those in their individual home buildings. So that was last spring. At that same time, Dr. Musser was also leading our comprehensive plan efforts, which was finalized in last spring. One of the goal items in that comprehensive plan is listed up on the slide for you, and that was to evaluate the impact of enrollment and building usage for potential programs like full-day kindergarten. So we knew as a district that we were committing this as a priority for us to explore what it would take to get us across that line. It was important enough that it was included as part of our comprehensive plan. Then, this year, we came back in October with a presentation of, hey, we got our additional EDK classes this year. We took a step forward. What do we think it might take to expand to full-day kindergarten for all? We had set that as our goal the previous year. We knew it would take a considerable amount of work. And in October, we said that we will kick off an exploration committee to gather stakeholders together to review important topics. And after that October meeting, we then formalized and formed the exploration committee. That ended up being 55 members who participated over the past 6 months or so. Teachers, board members, parents, we had a grandparent participate on the committee. Former educators, administrators, specialists, IST, and community members were all invited and attended at different portions or worked with our individual working groups. We had multiple committee meetings, full committee meetings, 4 of them, where the entire group met together. And then we also had 3 subcommittees, working committees, which dove in and looked at individual topics. So the lead for the first committee, which was on staffing programs and professional development, was Jason Hoffman and Tricia Pearson. Our second working committee was on facilities, operations, finance. Ian Decker and Lydia DeMeo were leading that group. And data analysis, success targets, and evaluation were led by Tom Kramer and Mark Smitzer. So that got us to kick this committee off. And I, at this time, am going to let each of those committees talk about some of the work that they completed over that time.
All right, so Mrs. Pearson and I had the pleasure of working with a group of teachers in Committee 1. And our goal were to look at those 4 items that are up there on the screen. We looked at currently what's happening in Hempfield in kindergarten. So we took a look at schedules, curriculum, structures that are in place, professional development, staffing. We did some research on evidence-based full-day kindergarten options, made some recommendations for how this could look moving forward at Hempfield, and then also developed some professional development plans for full-day kindergarten. We did a schedule audit for schedules across the buildings. As we did that, we saw there were some inconsistencies building to building in terms of what schedules looked like, in terms of diagnostic kindergarten, full-day kindergarten, half-day kindergarten. We did an inventory of the current curriculum materials we have in storage to see what the impact would be to the budget in terms of needing to order new ELA, math, science, social studies materials. We took a look at currently what we're doing with professional development and then did a survey for kindergarten teachers to see what their needs would be if we did move to full-day kindergarten district-wide. In that survey of our kindergarten staff, 3 main things stuck out. The first one was the adult support that came from the kindergarten aides that we have in our full-day classes was huge, and that those staff members are being used to help deliver small group intervention and instruction to students, helping provide really essential tools that are needed. So that was something that showed hugely in that survey. Secondly, the small class size in our current EDK classes that are capped at 15. Teachers thought that was what led to success as well in those classes. There was a real big emphasis on the fact that the time must be used appropriately. We can't go to full-day kindergarten and then try to double everything we're currently doing. That's not the point of this. The point is we currently have curriculum that's really designed for full-day because the state standards are designed for full-day. And so we don't have to add more curriculum. We just need to look at how we're structuring the time that we have with students. And some of that comes down to the third point, which is one of the biggest needs that our kindergartners have are social emotional needs. So how do they come to school? How do they interact with each other? How do they get along with each other? And that piece, as well as developmentally appropriate practices in terms of kindergartners can't come and sit for 6 hours of instruction. So how do we structure that so that they have small bits of instruction with time to quote unquote play, structured play, where they're putting that into action, interacting with each other and learning social skills at the same time that they're learning academic skills. We did a survey of other districts in the IU that already have full-day kindergarten. These were sent to kindergarten teachers, and we had 39 responses that came back. A lot of this correlated very strongly with what we were seeing from our own kindergarten teachers. You can see some of the information up there. The average class size across those kindergartners was 18 students. 72% of the kindergartners throughout that we surveyed have an aide, either their own or one that they share with other classes. Placement was one thing we were interested in. How do the kindergartners end up in the different classes? And about 2/3 of the districts still do kindergarten screening, where they have kids come in, test them, and then use that information to structure classes that are balanced. 85% of the districts had an intervention block, which is something that we already have, where students are receiving specialized instruction to meet their needs during that time. We asked the teachers what their preference was. You're a kindergarten teacher. You're right now teaching full day. Do you prefer full day? Do you prefer half day? Or have you only ever taught full day? Interestingly, 61% said that full day was their choice. Nobody chose half day. So if anybody who had taught both, all of the teachers who had taught both chose full day as their option. Recess is something that comes up very often with kindergarten discussions, and 100% of them had recess. The average amount of time for recess in their school day was 33 minutes, so about a half hour. 56% of them also had time in their schedules for unstructured play, where students, as I mentioned, were putting that academics into action by center use, so they could also have interactions with each other. There was a huge variety in schedules in terms of the amount of time devoted to certain subject areas, so not a lot of trends that we got from that, but again, the overall feedback when we asked them, what makes full-day kindergarten work for you? Small class size, aides, and unstructured play. So from the experience of many other districts in our area who have been doing this from anywhere from 1 to 20 plus years, gave us the same information that our full-day and half-day kindergarten teachers in our district were giving us. So that survey, along with the survey that we did, kind of helped us see that we're on the right track with what we're doing.
Our committee also did some research regarding the pros and cons of both the full-day kindergarten format as well as half-day. So I will highlight some key points, pros and cons under each. So to begin with full day, some pros were that there is more time for academic as well as social emotional learning, more time to support those learning needs during a longer school day. This helps with the transition, having a full day of school in first grade, giving them that experience and transitioning them into a full day kindergarten, moving to first was a pro, as well as reducing the stress for our working families who often communicate with us regarding their childcare and transportation needs. The cons that I'll highlight were more time may not be best for all students. So as Mr. Hoffman stated, we need to be really careful about what we are doing with that extended school day for our full-day kindergartners. It cannot be all rigor. It also needs to allow for some play that is still related to the curriculum. Another con would be, of course, it is going to cost more, and there are going to be some resource demands. Another would be a challenge for some from transitioning from no preschool to a half day or even a full day. And then we did hear from families as well who did not necessarily support the full day program because they value that time before a student enters school, that family time at home. Looking now at half day, the pros were allowing students to gradually transition to a school day, so starting in a half-day program and moving to our first grade full-day program. It may be more emotionally and developmentally appropriate. The key word there is may. It depends upon the student, and we will need to be cognizant of those students and what their needs are when we decide what model we're going to be approving. And another pro, as last stated under full day, is it gives more time for families to play and attend outside of school activities. A con would be that some students may be ready for a full day program, and if we aren't offering that, then maybe we're not meeting their individual needs. It does provide less opportunities for support. The half-day kindergarten day goes very quickly. And as I had stated earlier, it's challenging for working families with regard to transportation and childcare. We looked at the staffing programs and professional development, and I'll highlight some key points under first, the curriculum and schedule review. So the PA core standards for ELA as well as math are aligned to our current curriculum. Our science continues to challenge us, and it is changing. With a full day program, it would fit better into our instructional minutes. Additional curriculum materials will be needed for the added classrooms. The recently updated 2024 PA learning standards were evaluated, and more information would be needed to evaluate current day kindergarten schedule based on possible changes to our elementary schedule. And that actually will not come into play because we have decided, at least for next school year, that we will be staying with our 6-day cycle schedule. Moving to the bottom, the professional development and planning. This identifies targets as well as instructors. During the summer of 2027, it would provide more time for our kindergarten teachers to collaborate and plan. September 2027 in service could focus on, again, continued collaboration and planning and ongoing coaching throughout the school year.
And just,
Oh, I
know
thought
we're
that
not
was
to
the natural break. I was ready for questions.
Oh, sorry. I know we're not to question. This isn't a question, just a request. We do have the slides, so we don't have to read the slides. I think we're much more interested in hearing people's thoughts about the slides instead of reading what we already have in front of us.
There it is. Hi, everyone. I'm Ian Decker. I'm the principal at LIC. So from our side of things, we looked at an internal and an external side of things. It was great leading this group. There's some great teachers as well as some fantastic principals that helped out, as well as Lydia, looking at those numbers and nuts and bolts in those spreadsheets. So on the internal side, what we did was we visited each school, because could we fit everybody in all of the schools that we have? By assessing the bathroom usage, the different kindergarten areas, you're going to find that there's a lot of different options that Doug's going to get into in some later slides. But as a group, we had a consensus that we did have the space for it and the ability to do this. We also looked at a few other school districts with the help of Dr. Kane, really spearheaded this one. Ephrata, within the past 2 years, has done a full-day kindergarten program. Eastern York has also done one recently. While those two schools are a little smaller than us, especially Eastern York, we also looked at the school district of Lancaster just to see the differences in their implementation and how they conducted full-day kindergarten. It was interesting looking at all those different areas and different sizes and how they addressed the number of captive students, the aides in that area. But that was a good discussion point for us to be able to then bring it to the larger group around how we were going to explore the possibility of full-day kindergarten. Now, the financial costs. Lydia?
Yes, so I mainly focused on the personnel costs associated with full-day kindergarten. That ultimately is going to be our biggest chunk when implementing this program. So Doug will talk more about kind of facility, transportation, and things that he's collected from some of our other directors in those areas. But as far as personnel, I looked at it from two different viewpoints. I looked at it from sustainability, what would we need to build into our current budget to make sure that over time we would actually be able to afford this, and also I looked at it at the implementation costs, what would it actually just cost to hire new teachers, new aides, and what that looks like as well phased out until 29-30. So like I said, first was sustainability costs. Looking at this slide, I have the number of teachers and the number of aides recommended. So from where we stand now with 13 teachers, we're hoping by 29-30 we would get to 26 full-day kindergarten teachers. And from that, I just want to say salary and benefits are going to exponentially increase. One, the biggest thing is going to be insurance costs. We're averaging about 10% increase year after year. I think this year we were about 15% increase. We've come in lower in previous years, so I estimated about 10%. Our PSERS rate is also going to be increasing incrementally over the next couple of years. I think by 29-30, PSERS is projecting about 35.17% that this district is responsible for. So that is also going to take us, currently we're at 33.59, to get to 35.17 is a significant jump as far as what the district is responsible for paying retirement for teachers. Similarly, those benefit costs and PSERS costs will translate down to the aides. They're treated the same. Salaries are obviously going to be less, but they still have the same retirement and benefit costs associated to us because our aides are offered benefits because they're considered full-time positions currently. So just looking at it, by 29-30, we're going to need about $4.5 million built into our budget to make sure that we have enough just for full-day kindergarten. So taking the whole pie of salaries and wages, 4.5 by 29-30 would be just for kindergarten.
And then finally, our committee took a look at the data analysis, set up some success targets, and the evaluation of program success moving forward. What we aim to do was kind of gather where we are at currently with our baseline kindergarten data in terms of our kindergarten screening, take a look at comparable districts and what they are currently doing with their programming, identify what we're looking for in terms of targets, and then what we would project moving forward of how we determine it to be successful were we to implement any of this.
So we first started by looking at what the trends were in the United States in regards to full-day kindergarten, and showing an increased growth for our students from full-day kindergarten from half-day kindergarten, showing on the slide, showing that between 12 and 10% in regarding math and reading growth. Also, that achievement gap from the lower performing school districts and disadvantaged students were showing 1/3 to 1/4% quarter growth in comparison. But one of the more interesting facts was the confidence that students were showing in school and that pro-social development, so they were able to achieve faster and quicker as they were going through their elementary years beyond kindergarten. The trends that were taking place is that when full-day kindergarten first took into account, there was not a large trend of having full-day kindergarten programs within, sorry, we're on the next slide. Sorry. That the trend from 1970 has been showing that full-day kindergarten is becoming more of an implementation across school districts in the United States. But where it was most interesting was that students from low-income school districts are showing the more higher likelihood of that taking place, partially because of parents' interest in being able to move their students along, also having to do with the fact that full-day kindergartens on the full-day kindergarten programs were more available due to the fact that there was less access to full-day childcare at that time frame, as well as full-day private kindergartens. And finally, regionally, northeastern United States is a little bit behind compared to the South, but that does go with that trends with dealing with lower income areas where the Northeast has a higher aspect behind that and connection with that. So we're seeing that the Northeast is one of the last stats that was not put on the slide was the fact the Northeast is beginning to catch up to the South with full-day kindergarten programs.
What you'll see here is some of the comparison districts we took a look at. You'll see here there are 7 districts up here. Their enrollment is similar to ours with the exception of Conestoga Valley. And then you'll see there on the right that all of those districts currently have full-day kindergarten, and they've been implementing it with the exception of Penridge, which this year is piloting it for the first time. Just some feedback that those districts then gave us. You'll see there that Wilson really talked about how they've been really focusing on school readiness, social emotional skills, as you've heard people talk about already, and it gives them the opportunity, what they found is to meet kids where they are, design experience that are going to help them grow. CV also, teachers who were there since the kindergarten transition to full day, they report higher levels of early literacy and math outcomes. Also, kiddos are more social emotionally prepared, and they're also able to really identify kids and the risk factors that they're seeing later on down the line. Norristown, right now their spring registration, one of the things that I thought was fascinating was their registration was at 94% in the spring, so they were not having a huge influx of kids over the summer. Does that have to do with the full day switch? I don't know, but would be a great problem to have all of those registrations done. They do give out a kindergarten readiness kit to families, and for that district, around 50% of their kids do not participate in preschool, which is a concern, but because of the full day, they're able to address some of those needs. Dallastown, which is local, also, they transitioned to that full day program about 15 years ago. Been very successful, and again, they talked a lot about how it's really been able to help increase the academic skills, and the teachers were able to build those relationships with students because of having that full day time. What you'll see here is a comparison here of the districts that were listed. This chart outlines the PSSA proficiencies for 3rd grade in the 2025 school year. And what you'll see by looking at that if you look across there, you'll see that we are the 4th column. You'll see that actually we're really much on par with all of these districts that are currently implementing full day, which is a great testament to the things that we have currently going on in the district. With the exception of State College, I would say we're either at or above everyone else on there. Being able to have that extension of the full day K program and have kids and build those skills up, those baseline skills that we really need for this, would no doubt benefit the growth of some of these numbers when kiddos are getting to 3rd grade. This next chart, that is going to show you the trends here over the last 5 years, 21 being the first, and then 25 being the last that's up there. You'll see again, we are in the 4th column, and you'll see a really consistent trend for the most part, unfortunately, for all of us up there. You'll see that we all, back in 21, had a higher level of proficient and advanced students than we do now. So it is definitely, when we're looking at the progress of our students, being able to get them in for that full day and have those foundational skills really be set in stone, have that additional time with them. Again, hopefully should help to improve some of these things. And again, to know that we're on par with what a lot of other districts are seeing right now but having half day speaks a lot to what we have going on currently. Okay, so these are our most recent screening results. We, over the last 2 years, have gone to the use of the Pelley screening. The Pelley screening is a preschool readiness indicator used by Acadians. And what we've been able to do is, over the last 2 years, is screen all of our incoming kindergartners utilizing that screening tool. It is nationally normed, so the results that you are getting are students in compared to same age peers across the nation, and it gives you a really good indicator of where they are at in their incoming academic readiness. So what you'll see here is I really focus on the bottom line. For the most part, you'll see that fairly consistently, based on our screening results, the students that are in the 10th percentile or below coming into kindergarten equal about 20% of our incoming population. And if you increase that to the 20th percentile or below, it's about 35-ish percent of our incoming students. That is a significant number of students that are, in comparison to their peers across the nation, are academically behind where we would expect them to be coming into kindergarten. So taking a look at that, being able to have this extra time potentially with students really makes a big difference in trying to close those gaps that we're trying to make up, either because maybe they didn't have access to pre-K, or they're just behind in some of those skills. So seeing that trend continue and be consistent is at least we know what we have coming in, and having this data now finally to be able to see where our incoming kindergartners are really allows us to group our students appropriately when it comes into making selection for EDK, but also building classrooms for those other kindergarten classes that are functional and spreading out the wealth between our staff. So this slide is an indication of our growth of our current kindergarten class this year. When it says average percentile, the average percentile is the average national percentile of an average student. So what you see up there is the average percentile in May. So students on that Pelley screener in May of last year when they screened with us, the students that ended up in half day, the average score for them on the national percentile was the 52nd percentile. For students who are in full day, the average national percentile for those students was the 13th. Okay? Most recently in March of this year, we did our benchmarking assessment, and when you take a look at that, our half-day students, their national percentile in March was the 69th percentile, and you'll see that the full-day students are now on average in the 57th percentile. So what you see there is the average increase of a national percentile of a half-day student was about 16 points. For our full-day kindergarten students, it was a whopping 43, and I love the number there at the end. That shows you that average increase for half-day was 33%. Those teachers are doing a great job, but that 355% there growth is absolutely exceptional. But really, when you look at that, it just really shows that the students that had come in and were selected for that full-day program, they were the ones that really had a lot of need. And what we saw by March is that really, when I look at those two numbers, the 69th and the 57th, that's fairly comparable, right? So we took kiddos that were significantly behind their same age peers and really closed that gap for a substantial amount of them to really get them back on pace that when they're entering first grade, they are with, they have the skills that they need. So the job that the kindergarten teachers are doing in full day and half day right now are just, these statistics show they're just doing a wonderful job. So in terms of program development, what we would take a look at in terms of program success, first, trying to maintain as close as we can is the current student-teacher ratio that we have right now. As you see from the previous slide, it is very successful what we're doing right now. So being able to maintain that would be very relevant to moving forward. And also having that support from a kindergarten aide. One of the things I think our full-day teachers would tell you is that having that additional adult in the classroom and being able to have another group of kids working directly with someone in a small group is a resource that they cannot speak enough about. Being able to have that person work on skills with them, give them tailored instruction, rather than doing centers by themselves while they're trying to work in small groups you can't compare it. So being able to do that as best we can, as we do now, would be wonderful. One of the things that we would want to do, should we decide to move forward with this, is really have some sort of family engagement and communication so that people know what we're going to be providing them, right? This is brand new, and letting people know what does this look like and what are the things that we are giving to them. So whether that be working with Kelly on doing some sort of a video highlighting the benefits of our full day K program, but what do we think that it's going to look like? What's the shift going to look like? What differences will they notice in that their kids are going to be here in full day? And then for professional development, we want to make sure that we're setting it up so that our kindergarten teachers have the chance to collaborate. This is the first time that they're going to be having that full day. So being able to transition to that and be able to work together on what's working in terms of implementing curriculum, what are changes that need to be made, what successes and struggles are they having, but having that time for them to be able to bounce those things off each other is really important. And then if we decide for implementation, these would be the things that we were looking for at the end of the year outcomes, right? So one, high attendance and student engagement. Are we getting kids in the door and are we keeping them there that they want to be at school? Having that increased percentage of students entering first grade having met those kindergarten grade level expectations by the end of the year. The next one, reduced need for intensive behavioral interventions over time. This is what a lot of people have talked about in that social emotional side. Really teaching those soft skills, how to interact with peers, how to solve conflicts, how to work in a group, how to voice disagreement in an appropriate way. Being able to teach those skills because we have the extra time. One of the things that we have right now is we have Second Step. Our kindergarten classrooms that are full-time also have the pre-K Second Step program as well. So those kids in full day are getting a double dip of those social skills and working on those things. So half day is not getting that. Being able to provide that for all of our students could go a long way in solving some of those issues. Having that strong collaboration amongst the kindergarten teachers, balanced schedules that honor those student development needs. Jason talked a little bit about having that structured play within the classroom that's academically based, but also allowing that free play piece so that they can work on just interacting with each other and how to navigate that is important. And then ultimately, in the end, having positive feedback from families, teachers, and administrators based on what we've done.
So these individuals had the unenviable task of taking several months of work and consolidating that into several slides so that we weren't here all night. There was plenty more that they did, but now's the natural time for one of those question and answer breaks. Are there things, as they shared the work of their subcommittees, that you would like to know a little bit more about or would like to ask them questions about?
I've got a few. Go ahead, Mrs. Brady. After you, please.
Thank you. Slide 14. And this I think is Lydia. I just need clarification. When you show the number, this total sustainability cost, 2025 at 2.27, and then moving over to 2930 at 4.4. The 4.4 is inclusive of what we're already doing,
Correct.
right?
So the sustainability piece is if we do roll this out, how much it would cost the district in
that year
total for that full program.
So
correct?
the delta is like $2 million.
The implementation costs we have later on in the presentation,
Okay.
but just for salaries and benefits, it's going to be about like a little over $2 million.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
So the incremental cost would just be subtracting the current one from the projected one. That would be the incremental cost?
Yeah, essentially.
So, and I will say, this is an estimate based on one proposal. The conversation that we're going to engage in this evening will really help drive the direction that we're going to take, and we will fine-tune those numbers. It's just to give you a ballpark of what this might look like.
And I want to say it's a very hard estimate because obviously our CBA ends 27-28. So we have no idea what those potential teachers are going to be sitting at. So the 28, 29, 29, 30 numbers are very much a guesstimate because we have no hard numbers, truthfully. I just took the average of the current CBA's increases incrementally, and I think it was like 3.325. So that's just what I built in. Again, hard estimate. Those numbers are not steadfast at all.
A couple quick questions. So good information for sure, and we've been chewing on this and talking about it, I think, for a while, which is important to do with the scope and size of this. There was a statistic up there that talked about the percentage of kids that do not participate in preschool. I forget which district it was, Dr. Kramer?
North.
What's that number for us? If you're going to show a statistic for somebody else, I'd like to see what our correlating statistic would be for us.
I don't know the district-wide number on that. I would know substantially, like at Centerville, it's a significantly high number of students that are coming in that are participating in preschool. So it's nothing near that 50% number. I would imagine district-wide, based on what we see, it's significantly higher than that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to be able to get that number if possible.
Yeah,
Not that it's going to change
we'll make a
anything
note.
I'm thinking or doing, but when I think about, my 4 kids, or any kids for that matter, that are entering into the school system that have never stepped foot in a classroom in their life or anything even that looks like that, and now we're saying, here you go, be here for 7.5 hours, good luck to you. That's very different than the alternative. So I think it's probably an important thing to think through. The second question I have for you is, what do you guys suppose, or what do you guys and gals all suppose the number one reason is for the move from half day to full day over the last several decades, if you will? Truthfully, what is that in your estimation? There's probably a few different answers. But
Yeah, so I think one of the things is you're looking at like an increased academic rigor, right? So when you look at what we're expecting kids to do and meeting the state standards, the pressure of state testing, right? So making sure that we're meeting the expectations that the state has for us, being able to have kids in the building and being able to work on some of those skills. Again, we're talking about kindergarten, right? So we're talking about having them at the most important period of time for building those foundational skills that we build across for the rest of their school time. So being able to maximize the time that you have for them to work on those academic skills, but also the social side of things, where we're working on those school skills so that kids have the skills that they need to have the stamina to be able to do the academic things that we're looking, be able to interact with peers, that it's not interfering in the learning environment. So when you look at all of that, I mean, having that extra time with them in kindergarten to build those baseline skills, I think is part of the reason why you're seeing a lot of this.
It's also really multifaceted. Many years ago, the state rolled out the Pre-K Counts Grant, and that was an effort to have school districts either start programs or partner with strong early childhood centers in the community to begin working with children at younger and younger ages to have strong preschool early childhood programs prior to kindergarten. And those requirements for the 4-year-old program actually had a longer day than most school districts' kindergarten program. So you had at-risk 4-year-olds, at-risk meaning either A, academically and also economically, because it's based on parent or guardian's income in terms of their qualifications. And some of those pre-K programs also went as young as 3 years old for children who are qualifying. So theoretically, you could have had 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds in school longer than a kindergarten program. So there were districts then across the state that were saying, okay, if we have students who are really at risk at earlier and earlier ages, going to school longer at 3 and 4, we should look at something for kindergarten. Well, that turned to then, well, if we're doing it for them, how do we do it for everybody? Because then it also became a child care component for families to be able to getting kids, for them to work. So there's multi-faceted issues that really come down to it. But looking back historically, that's where this really started.
Yep.
Because it was really more about the 3 and 4-year-olds, getting children engaged in academic age-appropriate learning at an early age. And part of the Pre-K Counts program requires a family and community interaction so that you are working with families to help them outside of the school day continue the education with their children at home so that they're ready for kindergarten, which is why you in the past were a lot around like Thrive to 5 and United Way and a lot of other work that was done in the early childhood realm. It just kind of caught on very quickly for schools then to latch on to full-day kindergarten.
Understood. Cool. Appreciate it. I'll come back to that in just a second, possibly. Third question, final question is, can anyone here on the panel talk to me a little bit about, so clearly there's statistics everywhere you look in terms of academic achievement and educational achievement and growth in the moment, right? Can anyone speak to me about that same level of achievement as time progresses, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade? Here's the reason I ask. I've got a 7-year-old first grader. If my 7-year-old first grader, and granted this is probably not an apples-to-apples comparison, but if I have a 7-year-old first grader that goes out on the basketball court and plays against any other first grader, it's kind of a fun thing to watch. It's, right, it's relatively even. Dr. Decker, you could speak to this. You put a 2nd grader against my first grader, not all the time, but by and large, who wins?
Well, I mean, I think your team beat my team when we played earlier this year, so I don't know. I'm this to attest to
That's
this.
purely coaching, but that's a sad.
I blame the reffing.
Right. I do too. Refs are horrible. typically the second grader at that age is going to be head and shoulders stronger, faster, right? When you put a 7th grader versus an 8th grader on that same court, sometimes you can't tell who's who, right? So it evens out. I want to know what the statistics are and what your data tells you about the exact same situation in the classroom. Because I don't see data that supports, while we live in the moment, and keep in mind, I'm not poking holes here because I'm against this. I'm poking holes because I want to make sure that we turn over every single stone. And right now, I don't think we are, and I want to make sure we do. Can anyone talk to me about what happens in year 2, year 3, year 4, and how that gap seems to disappear?
So I can share in some of the initial research that we're seeing come grade 3 is if you were to isolate simply kindergarten as the factor, full day, half day, by grade 3, those gaps close, right? So what you're doing is you're setting them up for success in those foundational grades, right? If you add in other factors, it obviously becomes more challenging. If you have a program that is not showing the full growth, now you're compounding that, and those gaps start to get wider in the intermediate grades and secondary grades as they progress through their programming.
So I guess I'll go back to 2 things. And number 1, I'll go back to my second question. I want to make sure that we are looking at things from from purely not just one standpoint. I mean, what I was getting at with that question of when you think about when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, right, versus today, half day to full day has flipped. Well, just by coincidence, so has the single income and double income household, right? That ratio back in the day in the 80s, 90s, or certainly the 80s was what, like 70, 80% or whatever of all households had one income and a stay-at-home parent, right? Today, that ratio is flipped on its head, right? So are we answering the call of the education for the student, or are we answering the call for the mom and dad who say, I need to send my kid to school so I can go to work, right? I want to make sure that, and while we need to pay attention to both, right? I'm a parent of 4, I get it, right? I want to make sure that we're not solely looking at one thing and not and getting rid of another, right? And with that, what I would task us all with is when we think about where that gap starts to disappear and become non-existent, right? I don't want to look at just data today. That's a present bias, right? I want to be careful that we don't pay attention to just that, and we pay attention to things as we continue to progress. So the folks that are in front of me are highly educated educational professionals, right? And I'm not one of them, but one of the things I would want to make sure that we do is we keep very, very close attention on what happens in the year after kindergarten. And how do we make sure that, Dr. Dandridge, that gap doesn't go and how that gap continues to stay wide. That's my task, or that's my ask of everyone in this room, frankly, because I don't see it happening statistically speaking.
I think the reason you don't see it statistically, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is because we currently have a hybrid program where we're bringing in some of those students that need that extra time, and those that maybe come in a little more prepared are in the half-day program. And so is that accurate that our numbers, when I look at slide number 20, and you can see that we're tracking fairly well on a few of these slides, and the data doesn't look like there's a compelling reason, but we also aren't just running a straight-up half-day kindergarten across the board. Is that accurate that that data is a hybrid? That data is all of our kindergarten data together?
That data is
This
third grade
Yeah, this
data.
is 3rd grade.
Oh, that's 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Never
So
mind.
students would have gone through our program and other districts' program, whether it's half day, full day, or the other comparable districts full day, except for Penn Ridge, which was at that point half day. And then how did they do by 3rd grade? And part of the other challenge with this is when you look at kindergarten, the standards years ago versus where they are today. The standards are written for a full day. And that was always a debate when those new standards were rolled out, like how are districts going to encompass all of this? And so what you had was you inherently had a gap. And so districts that went full day, the goal was to try and make sure that all of those kids had everything. But what people tend to think is, okay, you have more time. And so with more time, then we could do this, and we can do this, and we can do this, and you get the creep of everything coming down in by grade. And so, first grade teacher saying, kids need this, okay, kindergarten teachers need to do that. And you just kind of see it backtrack, third, all the way down. If you're going to do this, you need to be very protective of the incoming kindergarten class and not push down. And you really need to go the opposite way and ensure that the kids have the early literacy standards to make sure that they have grasped the whole foundation of what it means to learn to read. And if you don't have the time dedicated to that, the gap is going to continue to narrow out by third grade, but it's still going to get wider because you're going to have students who are going to be missing opportunities because their gap coming in is much greater, which is why when you saw the data of our full day program right now, they're making great gains, but they have a lot of catch up to do because of where they started in comparison to their peers.
Yeah,
So
maybe
that-
slide 23 is a better example of what you just shared.
Yes.
Yep. And so that's an important piece for districts, and it's hard because districts have to wrestle with that. You know, when you think about the expectations and what do we have to do and how are we going to do this and how are we going to do this, well, we can put a little bit here and we can put a little bit here, but that little bit is never a little bit. And that little bit creates more of a gap. And so you really have to make sure from a curriculum standpoint that the teachers in the early childhood grades are truly focused, laser focused on those specific learning to read standards and not meshing in everything else. And I can say that because I taught it. You know, I taught extended day kindergarten, and I know I see Jamie out there as well. Like, we've had that experience where we have kids who are the ones who have that greater gap, and you catch them up, but the peers keep going, and they have to be able to move at a much faster pace. So have the resources and supports. So the way to do it is to make sure that you are protective of those standards.
I think that leads good into the next section of the survey data of what was implemented this year. I think it kind of leads into
So we knew we were seeing great results in that EDK program. So we wanted to survey our families who were in that EDK program to find out what their perception, what they thought of the programming for those 90 students who were invited into programming this past year. So as you remember, we now have 90 families who are participating in EDK. 57 of them chose to respond to the survey, which I thought was a great response rate, even better than what we did with our half-day survey results. And across the board, so the purple and the green are strongly agree. Across the board on these first individual questions, our families are agreeing and strongly agreeing their child adjusted to the full day schedule within the first month. Their stamina grew throughout the year. They're better prepared for first grade, and they are 100% strongly agree that they're happy with the district's decision to expand to EDK. So that's aligning with what we saw with those growth results, right? We know that students came in, many of them had a low readiness for school. Some of them had preschool experiences, some had none. We took them from where they were at and saw tremendous growth throughout the first half of the year that we saw. Some other questions that we thought were interesting to ask, we wanted to talk about the social emotional growth to make sure that we weren't just talking about academics. Were their students growing? Did they see growth in their child throughout the course of the year based on that programming? 7 is strongly agree. You can see everyone was either neutral or all the way to strongly agree. We didn't have any disagreements in that category, and the majority of the families were on the 6-7 end of the scale there. I knew it as soon as I said it. I got a middle schooler at home, and I heard myself say it. But,
no distractions.
I didn't do the hand motion. Sorry.
Parents are like,
Soft skills, don't get distracted. Let's go.
Our half-day data was also strong, not as strong as the EDK. So I didn't put it up here, but we saw that in our half-day programming as well. The next slide. So we thought it was important, largely that conversation that we were just having. If we just expand full day and make it all about academics, we have failed our students, we failed our programs, right? So what did our families feel about that balance? So on 7 here was, I come in and I think my students are engaging all in academics all day long in that full day program. A 0 would be they come in and all they do is play, they don't have any academics, right? And where do you find yourself on that scale? Our families largely lived around the middle, which is great for our full-day programming. That's the balance we want. 4 would have been right in the middle. It's a perfect balance of unstructured play and academics to 5, which would have been slightly above that. I think that's the target, right, where we want to be. I think that's, again, speaks to the staff that are implementing that EDK program, what they have done with those full-day experiences. They have not just continued to put them on iPads and have them play instructional games all day long or throw more content at them. They've really tried to strike that balance for our families, and our families are seeing that, and they're reporting that back to us, which is wonderful. This one, you might ask, why do we ask this question, right? My child shares stories or facts from their science and history lessons at home. So the reason we ask this, we actually asked this about literacy, and we asked this about math as well. And I would say those results between our half-day families and our full-day programs were pretty similar. Our students are coming home and saying they're reading, they're doing math, and they're talking about that at home. The interesting question here was when you get above reading and math, how many of those students are sharing about the science lessons that they're doing in the classroom and the history lessons that they're doing in the classroom. You can see a wide gap here between what our full-day EDK families responded, which is, again, over 90% of those families are saying, yeah, I'm hearing about science and history at home, versus our half-day families, where we had less than 50% of those families where the students were talking about that at the dinner table. Why is that? We can ask that question. Most likely because half-day has so much less time, there is not time for a lot of those additional experiences. That's not what students are experiencing on a regular basis. The time that we do, the limited time that we do have with them is focused on the literacy skills, the math skills, some unstructured play recess, and then we run out of time to get to some of the additional opportunities. To me, that is a strong statement as to what some of the impact of a full-day classroom could mean for our children. And then the final one here was many on the committee asked how many of our families might choose full-day or half-day if given the option. So in our half-day families, so 176 of those responded, we had over half of them strongly agreed that they would choose a full-day program. Another 13% agreed. We had about 21% that said, nope, I would like to have a half-day program. So I would say, if you're looking at this, it's about 80% of our half-day families are either neutral or agree that full day is the way to go, versus about 20% saying that they would prefer just to have the half-day option. And I will add one piece before I get to your question, Mr. Grant Keener. What is not indicated in this pie chart are all those EDK families that we asked the question of. And if you remember, 100% of them chose full day. If I put them into this, it probably drops down to about 15% of our population that would be choosing half day versus the full day option.
So this question, was the presumption here, were these people picking between half day and full day or between full day and no day?
So you can see the question on the slide right there. That's exactly what they were asked. So it's to our families that are currently in a half-day program. If Hempfield offered a full-day option, would I choose to send them to full day? That's what we asked them.
Okay, so the question's a little ambiguous.
Yeah. So we were trying to get an indication of how many would continue in a half-day programming if given the choice versus those that would rather choose a full day if given the choice.
Right, okay. I see, yeah.
How would you have worded it?
No. I would have said, if Hempfield is deciding between half-day kindergarten and full-day kindergarten, or no, if you had the choice, would you choose half-day, full-day, or no kindergarten at all, or something? Because right now, if you read this, I'm not sure whether I'm choosing between what I currently have in this new program or what I currently have and no kindergarten or full day.
Well, I mean,
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
They're not
It
required
doesn't
to
matter.
attend
I mean,
kindergarten.
The question is what it is. If there was ambiguity, that's fine.
Well, and a follow-up question I had was, were these half-day kindergarten families, they did not see the data from the full-day kindergarten survey
just
when
a-
taking this survey.
A cold question to them.
And I'm just thinking of myself in that situation, had I seen the data from the EDK classrooms, I'd be like, holy, I might change my vote.
Right. I also think it I mean, these are people who have just done a half-day program, and I'm assuming had a good
wonderful.
experience in
And
our
our
half-day
teachers are doing
program.
great with-
Right? It's different than asking somebody who's never experienced any program, right? So.
But there
it's
are
just-
also families who are very aware of this topic and who are adamant against a full day for 5-year-olds, and they want more time with them at home. And so that is, that's always been kind of the debate with families, just like it is should I send my child to kindergarten or not, regardless of full day or half day. And then it's, do I want them there all day or just a half
Or
day?
should I send my kid to a full-day private kindergarten so they get that full-day experience, because they're not getting it in Hempfield? Sorry.
This question wasn't originally on the survey, and as we discussed it as a committee and did some roundtable discussions, that question came up. How many of our families, because we don't know unless we ask, right? How many of our families, given the choice, would choose half day over a full day? So we were trying to get some indication of that. So, again, quick natural breaking point here. Questions on any of the survey slides or the surveys that our half day or full day families completed for us? If not, and I know we already had some discussion on that, I will move into some of the next topics here. So now here are some committee conversations. So we did a lot of research about kindergarten programming, kind of did a needs analysis of where we are at. So now some of the topics were known. We were going to try and wrestle with some of the important topics, and you can see the first one here is, should we be preserving a half-day option for our families? We have some neighboring districts who have transitioned from half-day kindergarten to full-day kindergarten. Over the past couple of years, we had some conversations with them about what that looked like. Some of those districts have, while they're transitioning to full-day, preserved a half-day choice for their families. And what that looks like is all students would come in the morning, and anyone who would like to stay all day can participate in full-day kindergarten. If you would like half-day, you pick up your child in the middle of the day, and then you have a half-day option. Anything that happens in the afternoon, you don't get, because you're now going home with your family. So we wanted to know how that was going. We had at least one district sharing about 10% of their families chose that option at the beginning of the year. They are a smaller district, so that was a much smaller class size for them that they were making adjustments for. As the year went on, about half of those families decided, I know I said at the beginning of the year I want the half-day option, but really I'm seeing tremendous growth in our peers in the full day. I'm going to transition them back, and they actually put them back in the full-day program. They now are less than 5% of their families who are continuing that half-day hybrid partial schedule. In that option, it is a nice convenience for your families, right? Because you're providing both for them. There are several challenges to scheduling. There are several challenges to the consistency of the programs that you're offering that they spoke about, that they're wrestling with, to the point that they are asking themselves whether or not they're going to continue that option going forward. So we talked about that a little bit as the committee, and said what are some of the pros and what are the challenges of providing half-day kindergarten. The pros are flexibility for our families, community appeal, right, to ease that transition into a full-day academic experience. Some of the challenges, though, are pretty self-evident, right? If you're only there for half the time, your peer's there for the full time, you're missing a lot of instruction. Not only are you missing a lot of instruction, you're also missing a lot of activities. Those might be assemblies, those might be class parties, those might be safety drills. There's a number of things that if you're not there the full time, you may not be getting or exposed to. Obviously, because you are getting a different program in kindergarten, there's going to be gaps that now need to be filled in first grade. So now your first grade team and teachers are filling those gaps with some of their students and are obviously creating two different tiers or two different places for their families that are coming to them in that first grade, first compulsory year of education. to them. There's some social fragmentation there with having some that stay the full day, some that stay half day. Why is Johnny getting to go home midday while I got to stay here all day long and continue to do school?
Or opposite.
Yeah.
And the opposite.
I need to-
Yeah, 100%.
Why don't I get to stay?
Yeah,
They get to
there's
Mrs.
both
Esserman, I didn't
sides.
hear your question.
I said I just want to balance it with the opposite, that you could hear a lot of students saying, why don't I get to stay? Like,
Sure.
I want to stay, like, you know.
What I meant by it is basically saying you have two different types of students that are in that same classroom, right, experiencing that. You have some equity concerns there. There are very legitimate scheduling concerns for us, which would mainly be having to front load a lot of your core literacy and core math instruction, all those big things that we saw in our current half-day programming to the morning. You are not getting intervention time in the morning because you run out of minutes. You're not getting as much of that science and history time that you have because you just have a half-day experience for them. Typically, that is going to push your kindergarten lunchtime to be the last lunchtime because then you're getting more time with those half-day students. All things that they've worked around, but do impact to the building schedule. And then from the teacher end, you also have some classroom management. Again, two different types of students experiencing two parts of the day in different ways, so there are different classroom management considerations there. So those are some of the pros and cons, just some of them that we discussed. Some of the additional points that the committee worked on and talked about. Kindergarten is not a compulsory grade level in the state of Pennsylvania, right? It is optional. And during policy, we'll talk about that a little bit farther. But knowing that it's optional, it's not compulsory, and about 15 to 20% of ours preferred half day over the full day. We know that what we're doing in those full day programs is strong programming because we're seeing the growth. We do have some private half-day options in our community. Ultimately, when they weighed everything together, they felt the challenges of providing that choice outweighed the benefits. It was not unanimous, as you can imagine. There are some that on the committee that really wanted and pushed for that half-day. But as a committee coming to a consensus, that was one of the determinations that they came with. One of the next conversations that we looked at was facility use. You know, this is a big one for us when we are looking at kindergarten placements. Not only do we have the money for staff, but do we have the place to put all of those classrooms? So I will try and summarize this as best I can. Centerville has room. They have additional openings. That's one of the reasons why our EDK program was housed there originally. Due to the unique layout of that building, we have some opportunities there for additional classrooms. East Pete and Rohrerstown could, with our current configuration, find about 3 kindergarten classrooms without having to stretch or to move programs elsewhere or do anything crazy creative. So that benchmark.
3 total kindergarten classrooms.
Correct.
Not additional.
Correct. Total.
Yes.
So East Pete and Rohrerstown, like if I know if I need more than 3 at that building, I'm going to have to move programs to another place. Again, likely a building where we know we have openings. Farmdale, Mountville would be at 4 classrooms that they could support without having to move programming. And then LPC has always been our challenge. Currently, they have 3 kindergarten classrooms that are EDK or half day. They could add 2 or possibly 3, and I say the possibly 3 because it depends on enrollment, and if they have a large first grade class, second grade class, third grade class, they need more rooms. We've had a little decline there at LPC over the past couple of years, so there's probably close to 3 classrooms available right now. But that would mean they would be 5, 6 would be their tipping point before we would have to look at moving programs elsewhere. So you'll see some of those numbers when we come to different configurations later in the presentation about what we might look at. That's what we could do with current configurations. To make sure we were exploring all conversations possible, we also said, all right, is there anything creative we can do? And really we were looking at the Landisville area because we know that's our hinge point with challenges. So we put a couple different options out for the committee to discuss. around Landisville. Those would be, the first option was that LPC becomes a pre-K building, and then all other buildings in the district would ship their kindergarten over to LPC, would open up some classrooms in all those other buildings, and the other buildings would become grade 1 to 6 buildings. Option 2 was, instead of having a primary and intermediate, both Landisville schools would become K to 6 schools. And option 3 there was, could we move 3rd grade up to LIC and have LPC be a PK to 2 school and LIC become a grade 3 to 6 school? Any of those could potentially change some of the space that we have for kindergarten programming. I'm not going to read through all the pros and cons on all 3 of those options. Several of them are listed here. Obviously, in LPC becoming a pre-KK building, you have many kindergarten classrooms now available at LPC, right? One of the challenges now, I can't just move multiple grades into Dr. Decker's building over there at LIC if I'm going to move 1st, 2nd, 3rd up. So that's probably going to mean redistricting and causing our communities to change and go to different elementary schools so we can balance out what that grade 1 to 6 would look like among our other 6 schools. There's definitely advantages about an early learning literacy center that I think people were attracted to, putting all of our pre-K and kindergarten together. It would mean higher transportation costs though, because now you're transitioning students from the entire district to LPC. You're also adding another transition from kindergarten to 1st grade. You potentially have siblings who might be in different buildings if they have a kindergartner going to LPC and their 2nd or 3rd grader going to a different building. So a lot of challenges to option 1 there. Yeah?
So obviously we're sort of very much in the spitballing phase, but
Yeah.
hypothetically, if another suitable space could be found for everyone in this building, would that
Are you talking about,
create
when you say this
more-
meeting, the administration building?
The building where we're sitting right now.
Sure. So,
How would that change your analysis?
so we did,
Obviously, huge if, we're very much in the theoretical right now.
we did talk about, actually, we kind of engaged in that conversation with LEC, not necessarily this building, but
Yeah.
LEC.
Okay.
And some of the challenges there is not having a cafeteria, not having a gym space. So some of those other activities, it's not built for. So it would be a challenge. Could we possibly go down those roads? We could.
Okay.
But
Just asking. I mean,
to save the surprise, we did not recommend any of these 3 options. But I'll just quickly go through 2 and 3 for you, just so you can hear them, right? In the second option was when LPC and LIC both become K to 6 buildings. So some of the challenges there are obvious to our Landisville families. I really like Dr. Decker, or I don't like Dr. Decker, I really like Mr. Swanner. I would like that school across the road, right? Why are you telling me that I have to go to that school and not this school, right? We could work through that, we could build procedures for it, but it certainly would be a challenge. It would allow me to get some kindergarten classes at LIC, which I currently don't have, right, which might give me some space, but it also means I'm gonna have to move some programs. Obviously some logistic things like renaming buildings, and the fact that LPC is really designed for a primary age range with most of their classrooms having bathrooms. So putting 6th graders in those classrooms is going to feel and look a little bit different. Not things that we couldn't overcome, but it was not one that we had a preference for either. Final one was moving 3rd grade up to LIC. Obviously, this would mean moving out a couple other programs. Dr. Decker is very accommodating, but moving a whole grade level up to him is a challenge. Maybe could we get 3rd grade up there with the rooms, moving some other programs? Maybe, probably. It really would push the size and stretch the limits of that building to its max, not only for the classrooms being utilized, but your cafeteria space, your gym space, your playground space, things like that. Not only that, but one of the real challenges here would be about some of your special ed programming. Currently, those spans grades 4 to 6 at LIC. If you now move third grade up and you need to provide special ed programming for those classes, you're now having students in grade 3 and 6, 3 through 6 in the same potential classroom, which is too wide of a grade span. We would probably have to split into grade 3, 4 classes and 5, 6 classes, which only means more rooms, more teachers, and less space, which we are running out of. So we were trying to be creative in thinking of different options. At the end of the day, after going through those conversations, hearing more of the cons there, we determined that even being creative with our Landisville buildings probably wasn't going to get us there.
Like, we still like creativity, but this was like big creativity that maybe we're not ready for and then would cause like multiple other things. Is that kind of a summary of that?
Very likely could delay some of the work too because of some of those other obstacles that we would have to work
And some
through.
of the things we tried to remediate with getting it in every building, like it's almost like going backwards. So we wanted to think big, but
At the end of the day, once looking at those options, we came back to we really want to work our hardest to try and accomplish this with the current facilities as we have them, not engage in a building project, which would delay things, not engage in renovations, which would engage things, not engage in restructuring of our Landisville buildings, which brought a lot of challenges to the table. Any questions about those options?
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
I know this is probably way off the, out in right field. Was there any discussion of moving 6th up to middle school?
It was asked during the committee, and I would tell you our middle schools are not designed to have a third grade level in. We know, particularly next year, what a big class we have coming into Centerville. There is not space currently for that.
Okay.
Without renovations. So.
Yep. And then in the discussion of continuing a half day, is there a reason we don't just have a teacher either at every building or at specific buildings that continues to do AM, PM?
Yeah.
So I feel like that would mitigate some of those challenges that you've mentioned.
Sure. So if, not saying the numbers would translate, but if we take our neighboring district, that 10% of their families chose that as an option, right? So if I now have a building that has a kindergarten class of 50, 60 students, I'm now trying to figure out half-day programming for 5 or 6 students. So being able to have an AM and a PM class that small of a population is not really realistic.
Yeah, I think for something that small, it would probably need to be like, if we're going to still offer, it would be almost like the inverse of our EDK when it was at Centerville.
And that was the conversation we had, like, do we now bus them to a certain location? And that's the exact thing that we were trying to get away from when we did our EDK conversations.
I guess at one point, looking at the response rate from the current half-day families, that was closer to like the 23%, 20 to 23%, and that maybe would allow you to have some more half-day doing an AM, PM, at least at some buildings. And what was the other thing? No, that's it. Thanks.
Any other questions about that section? All right, the next topic that we conversation on, I'm going to cover 3 of them here. So some of the conversations we had was on class sizes, because you heard that as a priority earlier in the presentation. Aides and how the additional adults are supporting those classrooms, and whether or not to continue with our EDK programming as we explore full-day kindergarten. So when you look at class size, just in the research out there, I will tell you it is pretty mixed. There is plenty of research showing pros towards class size, and several of them showing some concerns with class size being how you get additional achievement. What they generally agree around is that if you are going to look for smaller class sizes, they're most effective in the primary grades. In the younger grades, you get the best bang for the buck down there. Students who are disadvantaged typically benefit the most from smaller class sizes and having a little bit more personalized attention with the adults that are in the room. That is an effect that tends to diminish as you increase in the grade levels. There are other factors that you can implement in education that are more effective towards promoting student achievement than just driving down smaller class sizes. There is some strong data about teachers being able to identify learning disabilities and giftedness much earlier with a smaller class size. Better eyes on individual students. Some of the critics of the class size research tell you that it is fairly expensive. The lower the class size, the more classes you need. So it is a costly initiative for schools to engage in, and many of them have felt that there are better ways to spend your money. So compared to the cost, again, if you're going to do it, probably primary grades is the area to add it. And then if you go super small, there are some concerns with building resiliency with your students because they're not having those additional interactions with larger class sizes. So that's some of the research pieces that are out there. We wanted to look at how that might impact some of our facilities. So on the next table here, what you have are our kindergarten class sizes for the past 4 years with a little magic applied to them. So I'll tell you what that magic is.
Magic is more students.
If you remember 23 through 25, our EDK classes were all going over to Dr. Kramer at Centerville Elementary School. So his kindergarten classes looked larger and the home schools looked smaller. So you'll see a note at the bottom. I took all of those EDK students at Centerville and put them back in their home buildings on this chart to better represent where they would have been if we had full day everywhere. This chart also does not include our diagnostic kindergarten students. So if you're pulling up our enrollment charts from 2023 and asking me why don't I see 423 students in the class, it's because there's some that are not in there. This is really just trying to represent those half-day and EDK students. And then that final column, you remember very early on in this presentation, I told you one of the assumptions was we were going to add 60 students to our projections to make sure that we could accurately represent what it might look like if we got more of our families returning to us. So that average plus 10 column is, I took the average of the 4 years and added 10 students to it in each building. That's where those 60 students are living right there in those averages. Average-wise, that would get me a class of around 454 students. You can see what the impact would be for each of those schools in terms of expected or possible class sizes. We then looked at several different configurations here. What would it mean if we implemented full-day kindergarten with class size caps of 25? That's what we currently have in our half-day classes right now, right? If we get to that 26 student, we're opening up another class in the building so that we are not getting more than 25 students in any one class. It does not mean that every one of our classes have 25 students in them. It is just a cap. The averages are lower than that, but that's the max. That's where we stop. If we would go to class sizes of 25 in all of our kindergarten classrooms, that would mean, with those numbers I showed you in the last slide, we would need about 8 additional kindergarten teachers. We do project that given those numbers, we could hold all of those kindergarten classes in our current facilities. And again, this is where I told you knowing what that cap was for each of the buildings was important, how many classes I could put in. With this class size of 25, Centerville, East Pete, Farmdale, and Rohrerstown would all need 3 kindergarten classes. Mountville would need 4, LPC would be 5. All of those fit below what we projected we'd be able to handle. Yeah.
So you picked 20 and 25. Is there a reason for those breakpoints?
Sure.
Or if we did 23, is everything linear between them?
I'm happy to run the numbers. I got spreadsheets all over the place. We did some during the table talk conversations where I was breaking out additional class size requests. 25 and 20 seem to be some natural points that we could work with. If we came back after tonight's discussion and said we'd really like to see what it would look like at this number, we can do that, some of it within minutes based on what we have.
So hypothetically, if we would say 23, we would land maybe around 10 additional faculty.
I do love working with spreadsheets, but try and do that in the middle of a presentation off the top of my head. I probably couldn't tell you what that number is.
No
but,
worries.
But within 5 minutes of the end of tonight's presentation, if you'd like to know, I can run it for you.
I mean, we could go, like, there were options to go lower than 22, just to let you know. We didn't even put those up there.
I'll talk about that in just a minute.
Going to 23 is going to
I'll
really
talk about
low.
that in just a minute.
Yeah.
But just for reference point,
I think the pedagogical benefits fly out the window when you don't have enough people.
25 is
You don't have a critical mass of
I'm
students at that
I'm just saying. We're putting,
25 as a starting point is where we are at currently, right? So that was why we started there. Moving down to 20 would mean we would need 13 additional teachers. Not only that, but it also means when we get to East Pete and LPC, we're out of space. At East Pete would need 4 classrooms. I only can do 3 currently. LPC would be at 7. I told you 6 was my max there, right? So East Pete and LPC are both 1 over, which means I would probably have to move a program out of East Pete or LPC to another elementary school in the district that might have space. It could be our preschool programs that we have in those buildings. It could be an IU classroom that we put in those buildings. It could be a district-run classroom that I am able to move to another building because it's not based on the attendance boundary. All things that we can consider, all have pros and cons. Not weighing those tonight, just telling you I'm out of space in 2 spots if we go to class sizes of 20. The next, and I will tell you the reason 15 is not up there, even though I know there was many on the committee that would love to see class sizes of 15, is it was just unreasonable fast. I had almost all of my schools out of space, and the costs would just continue to grow. So we didn't even recognize it on the slide here, even though I know in theory some would love to see it.
By the way, can I say how much I love the phrase unreasonable facts? I'm going to remember that.
Great. I'm glad you've got a takeaway for the night.
What was that? Wait, what was that? I didn't hear.
I said I'm glad you have a takeaway for the night. So let me try and explain these bottom 2, right? So the third option on the slide here is if we kept class sizes at 25, but I preserved 1 EDK classroom at each building, and I know we had 15 previously, and I do have a cap of 15, but we said, all right, just to try and make it a little more manageable, let's cap that EDK classroom at 20. That configuration meant 10 additional teachers, but we could hold it in all of our schools, so that was a pro. When we moved to class sizes of 20 and an EDK of 15, we now have 3 buildings, East Pete, Mountville, LPC, all out of space. And I forget what the class count there was. I believe it was 15 teachers. Don't hold me to that number. But it was going to be a challenge. We'll get back to class size in a moment in each of those configurations, but just wanted to explain some of the things that we looked at there. The second question, and you remember I'm combining a couple in this section, was about those additional adults in the classroom, the aides that we added in our EDK classes this past year. The major benefit of those additional adults is allowing for more small group instruction to happen. So when the teacher breaks out the classroom, puts 4 in one corner, 4 working independently, 4 at the table working with them, they can now take their aide to take another 4 or 5 students to work on the side of the classroom on a targeted skill. It just gives additional benefit to the instruction that can happen in the classroom. It's not all about classroom management. It is not just another set of eyes. It is purely raising the achievement that the students are receiving, the instruction that they're receiving in that classroom. If you remember from our original survey of the kindergarten teachers, those top 3 issues to them were about staffing, adult support, and the small class sizes. That's what they felt was leading to the success of those EDK classrooms. As you remember, we currently have a kindergarten aide in each of our EDK classrooms. We do not have any aides in our half-day programs, right? Today's numbers, rough estimates, about ballpark 40,000 for an aide if we were to add 6 of them in our district, 1 for each elementary. That's a cost of about $240,000. You'll see that in some cost projections coming up in a moment. That is this year's cost. As you heard Lydia talk about, that cost is rising. So in some of the projections that we have costs for you a couple years out if we were to add aides to this. And then we also talked about that EDK classroom, and we had some conversations there. If we don't continue EDK and we have all of our full-day kindergartens being an even split, so that was the top two configurations on the last slide, we now have an aide that's not dedicated to a single classroom, so now we're going to have to talk about how we're sharing that aide, and we're going to have to be a little bit creative there and what that might look like. All right, so the EDK conversation. So should we continue with EDK or not when we move to full day? The benefit that we saw this past year, that amazing growth that Dr. Kramer showed you on that title, the committee felt was largely attributed to a number of things. That full day class experience, being there all day, smaller class sizes, they are a class of 15, and having that additional support in there. That is the secret sauce that they thought was important. If you can try and replicate that in your other classes, you might not need an EDK going forward. Some of the reasoning for that is because it is costly and it takes more space if we do preserve that classroom, right? If we had a cap of 15, you saw on that last slide, we were out of space at 3 of our buildings. I'm not sure I can move everyone over to Centerville Elementary based on having those additional classrooms. So ultimately, when the committee tried to weigh all the factors together, while they loved EDK, they spoke extremely highly of our EDK configuration currently. They felt moving forward, moving to full day K, our money could be spent better on aides over preserving an EDK configuration. Okay? And you're going to see that in a moment when we talk about some of the priorities that the committee weighed. But before I go into costs, I know the big reveal that everyone's waiting for, any questions on class size, EDK, aides, any of those topics that we spent the past several minutes talking about? Yes?
On slide 45, where you talked about the class cap at 25 and realizing that now many of ours are not hitting that 25, but in these numbers that you've sussed out as far as the number of classrooms needed, would you be expecting more of them to be approaching that 25 cap?
It all depends on the enrollment of an individual school on any given year, right? So if we have a class size of exactly 50 students, you now have 2 classes, 25 each, they are full, right? Yet that same school, if I have a 51st student, I now have 3 that are probably a class size of 16. Yeah. So it's really hard to project and say which ones would be at closer to 25, which one would be closer to 16. Obviously, as we expand the number of classes across the board, we do expect it to rise based on just the averages. Yeah.
Did you look at class size cap of 25 and EDK staying at 15?
I did, and you'll see that as one of the configurations.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a question about our aides and paraprofessionals. When we're talking about adding 1 per building, or that kind of 6, right? So, and if we're not preserving EDK, that becomes 2 dedicated kindergarten aides per building. When we look at potential configurations and how many kindergarten classes are from building to building,
yeah,
you have to consider like a Landisville situation where you have more classrooms versus like in East Pete, where you have maybe half of the number of kindergarten classrooms there, and yet both buildings have the same number of kindergarten aides. How would we talk about that? How would we look at that?
Yeah, again, that's part of tonight's discussion, right? You're going to give us some, I'd really like to see this, and we're going to come back with some numbers. In general, I would say, so we're talking 3-4 classes per building, right, outside of Landisville. If I have 2 aides, they're splitting between 2 classes, right? Morning, afternoon, whatever the case may be, right? Mm-hmm. As I get to Landisville, if I'm getting 6 classes, now they're split between 3 classes each. It would be a lot harder to do that if we would add an additional aide in there to get to that 2 classroom ratio. Certainly it would be more equitable. I'm sure there's several in the audience that would say, give us 1-to-1. I'd love an aide in every classroom.
I didn't
All
even
of it
go
has
there,
a cost.
Doug.
All of it has a cost. Just trying to say how we might be able to move forward. Yeah.
I think you also look at from a scheduling standpoint.
Yes.
And so classes in one building may have varying schedules. so that when it's that classroom's time to have the additional instructional aid support, they're ready for the small group instruction. So there's going to have to be some flexibility on both ends, but if ultimately the schedule doesn't work, we need to find a way to get additional support into those other classrooms where it is. So again, back to it's a guesstimate at this point, and so we may have to go up one, or we may have to get creative.
Right.
Little creative.
I'm going to talk in a moment about a multi-year approach that helps us right-size that plan, and some of that allows us to do that once we know what those actual numbers are going to look like.
I think a lot of my questions revolve around the benefits of EDK as a program on its own, and how much of a piece of that is simply the extended day. And so those are just the questions that I'm rolling around in my brain. And, when I think about the fact that then we are potentially exposing more of our children to longer socioeconomic, or social emotional learning, does that improve some of those benefits overall so that it's better able to manage a classroom? I just think there's a lot of things that we're not factoring in right now when we talk just about this cap size of 25. And thinking that that's a one-to-one, that just simply by moving our current model to a model, that has all these other variables. I think it's important to just think about all of those, and I know your committee did that and factored a lot of that in, but I do think it's an important part of this conversation.
So,
not to speak for the committee, but I was in the middle of those conversations. I think they were really trying to be conscious of what the spend was, right? They knew they could come here tonight and ask you for everything. They were trying to say, here's the priority if we have dollars to spend of where we would like to see you spend them. Class size to them was extremely important. That additional adult support to them was extremely important. While our current EDK configuration is great, I'm going to prioritize the other two over that. And I think that's the voice that they were speaking from.
So, Mrs. Small, are you suggesting that we would be better off doing full day for a certain cohort of students, maintaining extended day for a different cohort of students?
No, I'm thinking about what is the benefit that we're getting from extended day currently? Is it purely that we have them in school for longer, and is that the primary benefit that those kids are getting in that classroom, or are there other factors involved? And so do we want to maintain for that group of children? I think,
So
in some ways,
sure. Essentially, we'll segregate students based on some of the predictors early on, some of the socioeconomic.
Yeah, I just think that needs to be part of the conversation, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
I think we wrestled with that
And
a lot.
maintain EDK for our neediest students, and then have
I mean, I
full
think
day for everyone
that
else.
would be the argument that you would have here of why to maintain an EDK program.
Okay, I would try and understand the argument.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But Dr. Dandridge, if I'm interpreting this slide correctly, it seems like the committee believes that it's mostly due to the added time, and the ability for more small group instruction, either because of smaller class sizes or because they have the additional adult.
Yeah, and I don't want to be the only voice in this conversation. I don't know if anyone else heard differently in their table talks or small group instruction. I would say that probably characterizes it.
So it sounds like, again, as long as, because I read ahead, never mind, I won't spoil your grand reveal. Go ahead. But I'm trying to build something for your reveal, so go for it.
I hear you. Any other questions about this section? I know, big reveal, that's where we want to get. All right, so let's talk some of the costs and some of what the committee, you'll see some of this in the chart right here. On this table, what we did is we talked about several different configurations, from the most affordable to the most expensive option. And again, all of these are based on today's dollars. It only gets more expensive. Don't get fixated on the dollar amounts. But for the committee, we said, all right, your minimum get full day K across the board is those class sizes of 25, nothing more. That was roughly 8 teachers, $1 million right there. Then each configuration there without. You had your class size of 25, adding 6 aides, class size of 25 preserving EDK, class sizes of 25 with EDK and the aides, right? And all the way down to the last option, which was class size of 20, EDK 15, 6 aides. We felt anything lower than that, really, we were out of space and drove the cost up to a point that we weren't comfortable talking about tonight. So we had all those configurations on some butch paper. You had a first, second, third choice. You got to vote. Which was your first choice of configuration, second choice, and third choice? I think you see a couple things here. It was very telling and almost unanimous that the first choice across the board was, I want you to spend money on class sizes, I want you to spend money on aides, right? That top option was class size cap of 20 students with 6 aides, knowing that that dollar amount was about $1.8 million. That gave you 13 teachers and 6 additional aides. We know we're gonna have to move some programs from East Pete and LPC, but if we do that, we can do it with our current configuration. That was their top choice. The second choice was, all right, I really want that, but if you're telling me I have to drop something, I'm gonna drop the aides. I know it's important, but if I can tell you what my top priority is gonna be, it's gonna be about that class size of 20, right? So that was the second choice. Third choice was about class size of 25 with 6 aides. You can see that any of the configurations that had EDK in there, while again valuable, was not where the committee's head was at, saying that that was something that we needed to preserve. If we have dollars to spend, here's the areas we'd like to see it. We can do lots of different configurations. These are the ones we wrestled with during that meeting, with the assumptions of that teacher cost being $125,000 and the aide cost being at $40,000. Okay, so you can see pretty clear consensus from the committee about where they'd like to see those dollars. One of the things we haven't talked a ton about is some of the additional costs. You heard a little bit about it earlier. We tried to factor in some of those, working with our transportation department, rough estimate. This will be dependent on enrollment and particularly which schools get higher enrollments. Rough estimates, you're talking about $250,000 for increased transportation costs if you are busing all of your students in beginning day and end of day. Food service costs are a little hard to project, and I know Lydia and I talked about this quite a bit. At minimum, you're probably, because you're feeding a lot more students now, because they're staying full day rather than going home for lunch. At minimum, you probably need some additional workers for food prep in the cafeteria spaces. Your food costs are likely going up, so we put a buffer in there, but not an exact dollar amount. Mr. Hoffman and his team, Mrs. Pearson, worked on those curricular supplies inventory. We estimate about $137,000 to get what we need for curricular supplies for the additional kindergarten classrooms. Desk tables, furniture, hard to predict. Some of those classes that we're going to be moving into already have desks and tables. We're going to be talking about sharing spaces in some of the buildings. Some of them would be empty and need to be outfit. We have some inventory, so there's going to be a cost there. Don't know exactly what that would look like. But we said, knowing those additional costs that we had identified of moving this program forward, we're going to put in a rough estimate of $750,000 just to cover all of those additional costs, so that we're recognizing all of the costs going forward and not just salary and benefits. All right. And then for this evening, we're here to present 2 options to you, right? Option 1 there is going to be that most affordable minimum barrier to get to full-day kindergarten. That is class cap sizes of 25 students. It means those 8 additional teachers that I've been talking about. It is no additional aides in that proposal. There is no EDK classroom in that proposal. That minimum, option 1, we are estimating salaries and benefits to be just north of $1 million. Those additional costs that I just spoke about being about $750,000 with a total price tag there of about $1.8 million. On option 1, we project that all of our current schools can hold those classrooms without having to do any kind of renovations or building projects, etc. I will be very clear, this is not the committee's recommendation, but that is your minimum barrier to get full-day kindergarten, which was our task, right? We needed to come back to the school board and tell you what it would look like to bring full-day kindergarten to Hempfield. Option 2 that we're presenting tonight is that committee's recommendation. And that was that first choice of class sizes of 20 students. It would take about 13 additional kindergarten teachers to get us there. It would be 6 additional aides, and we are not adding a EDK classroom into this option. Rough salary and benefits numbers are 2.3 million there. Those additional costs stay the same of 750,000 to put the total cost of that proposal just over $3 million. With that proposal, space facilities-wise, yes, we do have to move some programs at East Pete and LPC, but we do believe we can find space in the district to make those moves, which would mean that all of those buildings could hold those classrooms with that configuration. One of the other important discussion points was, Doug, if you go back to the school board and they tell us we can't get everything we want, is there, and they say we just have to do the minimum 25 per classroom, is there an option that we could look at it in future years? Could we do a multi-year plan to get here? This slide is, don't get locked into anything. This is very customizable. This will be what tonight's discussion is about. Here is one way we could potentially get to that recommendation with a multi-year approach. With this proposal I'm showing you today, for next school year, we could potentially use 3 positions from our current staff. That would not be replacing some retirements and or enrollment drops that have happened in grade levels, and repurposing 3 of those staff members towards our kindergarten programming. That cost for those 3 additional teachers would be approximately $400,000 there, right? If we have 3 positions to add to our kindergarten staff for next year, and we want to talk equity and support all 6 of our buildings, what we would probably do for 1 year is support our half-day programming and have each of those 3 positions split between 2 buildings with an AM and a PM, or if I have a building that has a higher enrollment count, potentially I put an AM, PM in that. It could mean splitting some of those. It might mean staying. That 400,000 right there is the only number on this slide that is not about new money, because it's just about what's currently in our budget with our staffing right now. But still wanted to recognize it, again, for a lot of reasons that Lydia talked about, of having to project year over year a cost that is going to be continued, right? In this proposal, in the 27-28 school year, this has been our goal all along. We have said, what would it take to get us to full-day kindergarten in 27-28? We would need an additional 5 kindergarten teachers to get to that 8 threshold that we talked about. That would get us full-day kindergarten for all students with class size caps of 25. It does not have an aide. It does not have EDK there. It would mean moving programming at East Pete and LPC, most likely to Centerville. That cost, salary and benefit wise, for those 5 additional kindergarten teachers would be $675,000. And then that's the year that we would build in a lot of those additional costs. That's your transportation, that's your food services, that's your curricular supplies. Certainly, if we are able to move some of that money into 26-27 for whatever reason, more adequacy dollars, or we found a money tree out back, right? Certainly we can move some of those so that it's not as big of an impact to 27-28, but in this configuration, that's about $1.4 million in that school year. And here now in 28-29, we look at adding 6 additional kindergarten aides. That cost is higher now because we're 3 years out. It's not the $40,000 per aide, so we're projecting that around $362,000 to get in there. And then by 29-30, we would add 5 additional teachers. That gets us to the 13 that we need total for the plan to get to the committee's recommendation. That gets full-day kindergarten for all class sizes of 20 with 6 additional aides across the district. That additional cost for 29-30 would be about $850,000. Altogether, in that multi-year approach, you're talking about a commitment of about another $3 million there. Some of the other, I know we're going to come back and we're going to spend some time on that slide and you'll have questions about it, but let me just finish up a couple pieces here before we get to the lengthier discussion. Some of the other advantages to a multi-year approach, it allows us to right-size this plan. It means that we are not, some of those enrollment projections are becoming known to us. We are getting a better idea of how many of our families are choosing full day. It also avoids that surge of adding all 13 potentially inexperienced teachers during the same year to work with our kindergarten students, right? If we spread it out over multiple years, it eases the transition in and allows our induction team to work to support them. As I said, if the state does increase funding, it does provide additional adequacy dollars, we can certainly adjust this and move things forward. But it does allow us to spread that impact over multiple years rather than having it all seen in a year or two. All right, talking about next steps, and then we'll go right to the discussion. If we were to move forward with that plan as shown on the slide a moment ago, tonight we're going to have board discussion and some plan refinement, what you would like us to come back to you with, if you would like to change anything in this plan. With what I presented tonight, there's potentially no vote needed if we're not adding new positions for next year. But when we get to the point where we're committing additional funds or more staff, we would need to vote at that point. We would look to post internally for kindergarten positions, order instructional supplies over the course of the next 2 years. The full-day kindergarten committee, those 55 individuals, their work is not done. So they did a lot of prep work to get us to tonight. But once we have direction, that's when the other half of the work is going to come in as they work on what that implementation plan will look like. We'll obviously have to work with East Pete and LPC on the impact of moving programs, and we would certainly come back to the board and provide more updates on our progress. All right, folks, we made it to the end of the formal slides. So what discussion, what questions, what can we answer for you?
Dr. Dandridge, I just have a clarifying question. When I look at the slide number 49 and then your green blocks, which are technically your recommendations, why do we have two options and why is the second option on that list with the green 8 not part of that recommendation? Why would you go to the first one that no one even chose that you know is not going to be recommended? I'm not sure why there aren't. I'm just struggling to understand why aren't there 3 options on there, and if there were 2, I would have thought it would have been the second option with the class size cap at 25 and 6 aides, not the one that 0 people chose. I'm not quite understanding the logic behind that.
Sure. So what I thought it was important to represent is what the minimum cost to get full-day kindergarten in Hempfield looks like. So that's what option 1 is. It's not our recommendation, but I thought it was important for the board to understand what that minimum is. You build from there, right? So what I did is just presented the committee's top option. If you are looking at slide 49, what you have there, the first choice where 13 of the votes went was that class size of 20 with the 6 aides. The second choice of the committee was actually the class size cap of 20. So that's the 12. And then the third choice was the class size of 25 with 6 aides. What I did is I totaled up, we had different colored stickers, right? How many first choice options there were on each poster board, how many second choice options, how many third choice options there were. So for the top choice there of 13, it got 13 first place votes, 1 second place vote, 1 third place vote, right? The second option got 1 first place vote, 12 second place votes, and then that third option that you talked about, it got 1 first place, 2 second place, and 8 third place votes.
Yeah, I was just struggling with slide 52 and then just coming back with the most affordable versus option 2, which is one of the more expensive options. And why wouldn't there be an option of having that second one as part of that discussion, as part of the recommendation versus one that I think nobody was very interested in?
So
that option 1.
I will say, even option 1, even though that wasn't our preference, right? As we looked at a multi-year plan, that option is in there for part of that. So realizing what those costs look like when we're at that point and how we can build farther was the direction that we talked about. Honestly, what I am looking for after tonight's discussion is you say, this is what I'd like you to cost out, this is what I'd like to see from you, and us coming back in a month to share what those costs and configurations might look like.
I mean, I'll just share quickly, I don't want to belabor this, but I can tell you the cost of the option that is the first choice, 13 people, is daunting to me to start out. I would feel a lot better about the second line item on slide 49, with the class sizes capped at 25 and the 6 aides as a starting point, and then also utilizing the phase-in option to begin to do that over time, with that being the goal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think PA code says 26 cap with 1 aide is a recommendation, and 22 without an aide in the classroom as a cap. So I feel like that's well within that reasonable bounds. I think without an aide, I think 25 can get a little dicey. Most of the time, we're not pushing that limit, but I can understand there might be times we would. So I'm going to be bold enough to say, I think we need to start with a phase-in, but I liked starting with the option 2 on here. It covers a lot of ground. It doesn't require busing children to different buildings. It doesn't have any space issues tied to it, and it does allow the aide to be part of that decision. It's not the cheapest option, but it surely isn't the most expensive option on here either.
I guess I'll piggyback on what Mr. Walgamuth, well, I'm sorry, no one can hear me. I'm going to piggyback on what Mr. Walgamuth said. I actually, by the way, I think it's a spectacular presentation. It's long, but it was chock full of good information, and I commend the entire committee for the work that they've done, so thank you.
I should have mentioned at the beginning, many of the committee members are also in audience as well. So
Yeah,
I know
no,
a lot of them were interested, and there are plenty that are tuning in online also.
I like the phase-in. I'm supportive of the data behind full-day kindergarten. I started this process reluctant, like, oh, here's something else we're going to spend money on. But the data is unequivocal, and I think this is something that makes sense. I do like the phased-in option that lets us take stock, and if we discover that we're at a place that's working well, we don't have to go the whole way through the proposed phase-in. If it's working well, we can stop after year 2 and say, you know, we're getting good results with a certain class size with or without aides. If we're not getting good results, then maybe we need to be more aggressive than what we're currently planning. But if we phase in, it allows the administration and the board to work off of real Hempfield data and make informed decisions.
I agree with the phase-in approach, but I do not agree with the 25. I don't think from our committee's discussion, the goal was, let's get them all here and then assess the quality. I think all the work that was done led to not the recommendation of 25 for many reasons. I feel like that was just belabored at every group, every option, everything. So I wouldn't want to do a phase-in option and start with higher class sizes, and then we should start with the 20 and then phase in, is what I think. And I also would press to do more this upcoming school year, because I think financials show us with Act 1 indexes and other things that costs are only going to go up. Things that will be coming in the next couple of years that we already see also as priorities in the district. I think by waiting this year to add staff is going to set us back. I think we need to push what we're doing next year with that 20.
I support full-day kindergarten financially, and based on our current space, I could not support class size of 20 with an aide in that classroom. I think we have priorities, and the finances are a real concern. The space is a concern, and as much as I wish money grew on trees and we could do whatever we wanted, we can't. And I think that would be unwise to move that direction. I'd rather go all in on 25 with 6 aides than not phase that in than go with the phased-in approach to the last one. You can always move the needle. Once you put the class size at 20, it's going to be very difficult to move any other direction. If you start at 25 and you find that's too many, you can always back down from there, but you will never go back up to 25. I can guarantee it. And I wouldn't support it if we were going to jump into this with obviously about a $3 million plus cost to the district with everything else we have to prioritize.
Not all at once, not all the 3 million at once.
To that point, so Mr. Wogelman's point about the financials, looking at that option of class sizes of 20 plus 6 aides, on the cost chart, so on slide 49, that's listed at like 1.8, right, 65. But when we look then, as it's listed on slide 52, we have salary and benefits listed at 2.2. Tell me why, please.
Sure, absolutely. And Lydia, you correct me here at any point. When we sat down and sharpened our pencils and tried to make sense of it, that is the cost of the increase in salaries, the increase of benefits that we're seeing year after year. So we were trying to be reflective of the year that
That's a projection
that
over
those
time.
positions were added. The further we went out, the harder the projections were, for sure, because
Yeah.
there are a lot of unknowns in there. But that's why it's not a dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
None of them are showing at 125. They're trying to project based on that year what those costs might be. Ms. Saeed?
I also want to point out that all of the projections are assuming we're hiring bachelor step 1 teachers. That is very unlikely. So that's going to increase costs. What you're seeing is bachelor step 1.
Yeah, what you're saying is this is our bottom, not our ceiling.
Yeah. So if you want to cost out higher than bachelor step 1 teachers, let me know. I can do that, but that's just going to exponentially increase what we're already. And also no column movement. Also, bachelor
With-
step 1, no column movement.
The only thing I'll say with that as well, though, if you're adding, when you're adding positions, we're going to look internally first. There may be some of our veteran staff who are not in a current kindergarten position who might be interested in moving to kindergarten. And if that opens up a grade level, we potentially could be looking at a bachelor's 1 in that grade level to release that position. So even if not all of our kindergarten staff are at bachelor's 1, those positions potentially could be more on the inexperienced side. We don't know that, right? That's going to be part of the right sizing of the plan as we go forward.
I would say those discussions happen during the Kindergarten Exploration Committee, though, with a lot of kindergarten teachers there.
I have a few points. One, so based on the phase-in, if we did that, the total cost is actually going to be less than the 3 million. It would be like 2.6, right? Because we're reallocating to 3 teachers, and so that 400 for next year is
Some of those dollars would potentially be in the current budget, but it is also realized year after year too. So I mean,
Yeah.
you could argue that cost is much larger than 3 million too, depending on how you're looking at it.
Second, what are the programs that would need to move out of East Pete and LPC?
Yeah, we deliberately did not put that on the slide. Mainly don't want to stoke fear anywhere before we've had
Got it.
conversations. We've had some initial conversations with Dr. Goodrich about what programs might make sense there. But the examples, as I said, we'd probably be looking at preschool, we'd probably be looking at IU classrooms, or we'd be looking at a Hempfield-run classroom that is not dependent on that attendance boundary area. Those would be our
So
options.
it's not all of the programs would be leaving, it's just some of them.
In the plan that we are recommending, it would be 1 class out of East Pete, 1 class out of LPC.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking
Depending on
it
what the
ended
numbers
up.
show.
yeah.
If enrollment doesn't grow to that size, we might not have to move any, right?
Okay. And then another phase-in that I was thinking of as Mrs. Eshelman was talking, a potential option to keep the class sizes small and based on there isn't, I didn't see any data in the presentations that would suggest this, but because the EDK kids had a huge, what was it, like 300-something% increase, I feel like if we increased that opportunity to the kids who need it most, that would be a good next step phase-in. Obviously, it's not everybody getting to full day K, but it could be an option. to continue, or, you know, increasing the existing full EDK to, you know, maybe be 16, 17, 18 cap. So those are some thoughts. Additionally, you know, while I'd love to get this all done next year, you know, based on the presentations we've had about the financials, I just don't see how that's even possible. And in fact, honestly, as much as I'd love to add some next year, you know, we're going to have to find a place to cut that somewhere else, right? Because, based on your presentation, it seemed like, you know, we can find a way to balance the budget next year, but that's not with adding anything to the kindergarten program. So obviously, anything we add, we've got to subtract from somewhere else.
And it depends on if there's additional adequacy funds. Or
True, but considering that we historically have flat funded, I mean, that would be the other thing, is that we take a gamble this year, which again, I don't like to count on money that I have not been promised. So I would be very reluctant to do that, even though we're hearing that it's a good chance. And historically, we have always gotten something more. But again, it's you're betting on something that you can't guarantee.
Mr. Bromerski, I just wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on this and the presentation, the recommendations?
I'm happy to. Are there any other board members who want to share anything first before I jump in?
I just want to say that I would like to see more happening next year. I would like to see more kids being served next year in some way versus just having smaller class sizes across the district for the existing students. I'd like to find a way to get more kids into the system next year, and find whatever that path forward is to the ideal of the 20, class size of 20 and the aides. In whether that's in 29, or can we back that up and do it sooner in 28? But I do think we need to do more in the coming year.
I want to echo the same. That was my initial upshot, is that I felt like we've kind of been on this trajectory of like, we added, you know, EDK programs, and like this feels like a stall to me. And so I'd like to see us pushing forward a little bit more. I like this multi-year approach. I agree with Mrs. Eshelman that I think the goal is 20 if we can do that, in my mind.
I mean, to Mrs. Brady's point, I mean, there's an old saying, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? And we all agree that this is a good idea. We all agree that the data shows that the students benefit, and those are good things. Is there a compromise here where we could accelerate the implementation of it, but with maybe slightly larger class sizes than what some of us might prefer? Like, if we could find a way to do this next year at a class of 25, that would maybe be a quicker short-term budgetary hit, but it would smooth it out in years 2, 3, and 4. I don't know. I mean, it might be interesting to run that model and say, okay, we do 25 students, maybe we'll do something with the age, share them, I don't know, keep that number as low as possible, but let's get right into the data of full-day kindergarten quickly, but not give us maybe everything that we want, because frankly, we just can't afford it, given everything else.
I don't think we want to move into it quickly if we don't get it right. And I think as a board, we have to ask ourselves if we're doing this because it's the right thing to do academically and for our students, or because we said we would do it. And we do have a responsibility to our taxpayers to be responsible with their dollars. And this is a big difference in total costs. It's about $1 million. And what that difference is, with the lower class sizes and with the aides, is individualized support, more achievement and growth and opportunity. And we should really be trying to stay towards that 20 cap really it should be lower, but that's not going to be feasible. And I think slide 23 perfectly shows what happens when we do something right. And I think many people here know that I was in Hempfield's extended day kindergarten program, and I'm living proof of what happens when we do something right.
Yeah, don't just do it just to do it, but do it well.
I'd be curious to hear to all the points that have been made most recently about class sizes, right, versus timing and using phased approach, starting with the larger class sizes, like our principals who are here at the table. Like, can you speak to that a little bit and what the impact of that, or how you see? Yeah, so starting with the class, so we're talking about, like, can we get this done sooner or begin a phased approach sooner if we begin with those larger class sizes and no aids, like if we have those class caps at 25, knowing that not every class is going to have 25, but that's a possibility, right? So larger than the class sizes that the committee and folks at this table would necessarily prefer. But if we started there, what is kind of the impact? Is that like a leaning on doing it? Some folks are saying, should we do it right or should we just do it? Because we said we'd do it, and I mean, there's nuance there, but I'd just like to hear, kind of from a principal's perspective, or if we had teachers at the table, I'd be curious to hear what that.
Do you want to go first? Okay. When we look at slide 49, I think the answer to your question is pretty evident, that our committee, which is comprised of administrators, parents, we have support staff, as well as our teaching staff, reading specialists. We value smaller class sizes. Yes, having the aides is very supportive, but having these professionals have more of a personalized opportunity to work with students, to assess them, and then determine what interventions, whether that be extending them or supplementing, is really important when you get larger class sizes. And I know, Doug, you've mentioned on your slide that there's different research out there that supports either one. I personally would be hesitant to go with 25. I think that we are going to have greater success. If you look at it from an experimental standpoint, we just did an experiment. And there were a number of variables, as we pointed out: class size, full day or half day, and the additional aid support. And now we're saying that, okay, it's hard to tease out which of those. I think it's all of them. All of them had a positive benefit for our students and that growth that we saw on the previous slide. So I would agree with you, Makai. I think we need to do it right.
I don't think choosing a lesser option is doing it wrong. And I think that needs to be crystal clear. And going all in to do it isn't doing it wrong. Doing it right doesn't mean we have to spend $3+ million to get this started. We've been phasing some things in. And financially, I think it is a huge mistake to go all in with what we want as our wish list of 20 or less. If you look around at other districts that have full-day kindergarten, I can assure you most of them with an aid are 25 or less, or they're 22 to 23 without an aid. And I can't support that. As much as I want full-day kindergarten, I will vote against it if we're going in with the Cadillac rather than getting started at a different level. But I mean, when the board's done, I do still want to hear from Mr. Bromerski related to this and his thoughts regarding this.
He is, after all, the kindergarten whisperer.
I'll be quick, because I need to get to Rhode Island tonight. We could all do some quick math, right? Dr. Dandridge, I know we're fixated on 20 versus 25. The reality of the situation, though, is what? How many kids, or how many students do we suspect, given our current enrollment and or our trajectory of enrollment, how many of those classes will be at 25 versus 21 or 19 or 17 or 22? Right? I guess, so we can look at the number or we can look at the reality of the situation. And granted, I know that there's shades of gray there because, if we do go 25, you're going to have classes potentially with 25. And I know that that's something that's not ideal. I get that. I want a pool in my backyard. I don't have one. It would be ideal if I could. I want to make sure that I can look at this the right way, right?
If you're looking at purely averages, right?
Yeah.
So if I do class size of 25, our classrooms would be averaging, in some buildings, 18 per class, in some buildings, 24 per class.
Okay.
So, and it ranges in there. If you do class sizes of 20, our ranges were 16.3 to 19.6.
Yeah.
Right? Really running off just averages, right? So it's hard to project that. But.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't know, smaller class size makes all the sense in the world to me, speaking as someone that's not a teacher and has never done it, right? But if I had an aide, could I take on a few more students and be over the 20 mark? I would rather have that. Again, maybe I could be out in outer space. I could be in left field, so tell me if I am. But for me, if I'm a teacher and I've got to deal with, 19 or 25-year-olds on my own, or 22 with an aide, I'm going 22 with an aide all day, of every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I could be wrong with that. You guys can scream at me if I am. But just thinking common sense wise.
I also worry that for our community, I think as a parent, if I hear that we're doing 25 to get everybody in, that's not ideal. And the people who want it to be age appropriate and want them to get all the benefits of that full day now are doing it at the expense of taking my kid, who I'm a little worried about going full day, and putting them in a classroom of 25. And I just don't think that's what our community is asking for. That's what I heard from parents.
If I heard Dr. Dandridge correctly, we run 19 to 24?
If you do caps of
18
20
to 24, somewhere in that range.
Right. If I do caps of 25 in those classes, the averages would have been between 18 and 24. In those
I think we're a little bit hung up on the cap of this, which is the ceiling for this, and the reality of this is 16 to 19 or 16 to 18 with an 8 in the classroom, in my opinion, is more than this district can afford to go to full-day kindergarten, and I can't support that. That's the real number. That's not the cap.
I mean, I guess my question is, and we can sit here all night and argue 18, 20, 25, 0, 3, however many 8s. Those who are advocating for the smaller, more expensive solution, maybe that is the right answer. But what are we going to give up? What are we going to cut on the other side to pay for that? Because we've all seen the numbers. We can't afford, given the high school, given the CBA, given all the other capital needs, and given our Act 1 borrowing limitations, we cannot afford the small, most expensive plan. But if that's the judgment of this board, that that's the best path forward, fine. But then what are we going to cut to get back, to claw back the several $1 million to make it affordable? Are we going to reduce the footprint of the high school? Are we going to cut classes elsewhere? Are we going to lay off administrators or faculty in under-demand programs? But there has to be an answer to that question.
So now may be a good time for me to jump in. Because listening to everything, and first I want to thank every person who was part of the committee. It is amazing to see work like this when everybody comes together from different roles, different perspectives, and you can put aside your personal opinions and then come together and get consensus, and it's just absolutely wonderful. So I truly thank you, because it's such an important topic. And everybody wants progress. But at the same time, from a district standpoint, we can't do everything every time that someone has a request. But here, looking at some things, listening, kind of looking at where we are, last year, or for this school year, we added 6, and we're gonna start using the right terms, full-day kindergarten classrooms. Like, that's my first request. We're gonna now call it full day. No more EDK, it's full day. That's what we're doing, it's what we need to call it. We added 6 instructional aides, paraprofessionals to support those classrooms. So we've already made an investment there, and we were able to service 90 students in that program.
Looking at our ups and downs on an elementary enrollment standpoint, that's a gamble right now, as I shared with the board. But looking at where we are and what's currently in the budget and what we have to close, I think it's possible to add and repurpose positions where we can have 6 more full-day classes. Then we already have the aides, we don't have to hire any more. And the natural byproduct of that is you're going to reduce the half-day kindergarten class enrollment. And looking at the projected numbers, about 77% of the classes will be under 20. And so the only additional investment at this point is additional curricular materials, possibly. We have to look and see what's there. We have the space. We're not going to end up displacing anything, with the exception of maybe one building, but I think we can work through that. And really then it's going to come down to, from a budgetary standpoint, the commitment to allocate, if we get any additional adequacy funds, to full-day kindergarten, which is one of the top priorities of the adequacy dollars. We have the ability to do that. And if those dollars don't come, then that's what we'd have to look at from a reserve standpoint, which would allow us to have a further conversation of what's really feasible down the road. But in this setup, we are now going to service 180 students, which, depending on what our enrollment is going to look like for kindergarten, it's still an unknown. We could be anywhere from 40 to 50% of our kindergarten students. And using the approaches that we're at, it allows us to take another step, but it allows us to also service the students who truly need it, but also get to some other students who could potentially benefit from that. And then we see where things really land with regards to the next step.
So are you suggesting next year we double our EDK, the full day, what we're doing this year, 15 kids per class, 2 in every building?
So may I ask a question about that?
It's 20.
Yeah, you can ask a question.
So logistically speaking, from like looking at what class assignments look like at that point. So looking at Centerville specifically. So if I were to what you're saying is adding another full day class, so we'd have 2 full day classes. Okay. I think from an administrator standpoint, one of my hangups with that is that who do I decide is in my 1 half day class at that point? Because I would need to have 3 sections, right?
Well, you may end up having 4 based on the projected numbers.
And then, correct, but those half-day class sizes would be?
18 and a half, depending on, again, that's using the 67 number that was on the chart for Centerville. You'd have a 15, a 15, an 18 and a half, and an 18 and a half. So one would be 18, one would be 19.
And the 15, classes of 15 would still be enrollment by screening.
So that would be my next one. So the idea would be we're taking, we were taking the 30. So we're still basing the full day enrollment by screening numbers.
And it allows to add more, and then as we add more staff, we have the ability to now start adjusting and getting to the spot where everybody down the road can get it. It's just listening to everything. It's kind of a little bit of everything approach, but it allows us to take that next step forward. Things still have to be worked out in terms of looking at, can we truly do it on the staffing side? Can we truly do it in looking at the space? I don't think anyone would have to be displaced, with the exception, depending on numbers, of possibly one building. But we have maybe ideas of what could look like in that building. It's just a thought.
I think it answers some of the questions that we had about still offering the opportunity for half-day kindergarten for families who want it. It moves us further down the road, which was, I guess I was confused by year 1, according to this presentation, as to where those positions, what that was actually going to look like. And I feel like that makes more sense to me, what you just presented. I don't know what the numbers of that look like.
Well, but that's teachers. The year 1 here is saying we're 3, and it said it's reducing the count of our half day. But if instead we did an additional section of full day at every building, and looking at the numbers on slide 44, I'd actually say we probably want to do 2 additional at LPC, since they have 122 potential students.
It allows us to get closer to that first option of closer
And
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
use the words like strive towards, because the moment you set a firm number, and we've experienced this, we strive to keep the numbers here, but once you hit that number, it's, well, when are we getting the next section?
Mhm.
So if we're striving to do this, that's kind of the goal. We may not always end up hitting that goal, but we may not see the numbers that we're projecting. And it may very well could, but we may not. And so we don't know, and I think that's another measure that we can look at to say, hey, in another year, where are we? But we've gotten a little bit further ahead of maybe the ask. It's just maybe a little bit different, but I think hearing all of the comments, it does kind of address several of the requests.
I can absolutely get behind that idea. I think it's a wise move and it moves us forward. And I think we just did that and it was effective. I realize, I'll leave it up to the administration to figure out how that gets done. But I think your idea, Mr. Bermersky, makes a ton of sense. And I could absolutely get behind that from the financial standpoint and from some of the concerns around the class size. And I think it does answer a lot of those questions.
As long as the numbers work.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, that's always the gamble with this in terms of projection enrollment.
so if we went that way, then based on the multi-year slide, essentially we'd be transferring 400K from other sections or other grades, and then adding another 3 positions. So we'd have to find a way to fill that 400K from somewhere else or depend on the adequacy dollars.
Right.
And then I think if we want to go that route, that's great, but to everyone else's point, we need to not stop there. We need to, and we can't just wait till next year to say, okay, what are we going to do in 27? I think we need to come up with this multi-year approach so that we can tell the community by this year, everyone's going to be in full day K, right? So I think
Yeah, I think it also comes down to, it allows you to see what happens from a state budget standpoint, and if there's all the momentum right now, and as I shared with you, what we're hearing is, yes, adequacy dollars appear to be their support for that now, which is great. If for some reason that would back away, then that's a larger conversation with the board on, if this is truly the commitment, then how are we going to divert funds from elsewhere to do this? Because if we're not getting additional dollars, it's going to have to come from somewhere. So where are we going to get that? What's the plan, and what do we need to do to make that happen? But a lot of it's kind of a wait and see, but we may be able to repurpose positions this year to get us a little further.
And I think you know where I'm going with this. We're hyper-focused on class sizes, and I'm a believer in lower class sizes in the lower grades. But what I think I can't get my arms around is, and I'm going to throw the board under the bus with this, there doesn't seem to be a concern when we look at the high school numbers and we're running classes with 8, 9 students in them at high school levels and AP classes. Yet we want to make sure our kindergarten classes are at 20. If we made the adjustments at the high school that we needed to, in the long run, I believe we would be able to make the adjustment to having lower class size and those dollars would work. It frustrates me that we don't seem to be concerned about the low class sizes there that are unnecessary in a high school, yet we want to focus on the class sizes here, yet we allow that to be something that just continues. I can't get my arms around it.
real quick, Mr. Graham, could you go to slide 44, since we're talking about sizes? No, 44, sorry.
44.
So and this, I think, is where Dr. Dandridge was talking earlier, where, you know, what happens when you're at that number where, so like I'm looking at Rohrerstown, 55, right? So if you're saying cap is at 25, well, sorry, Rohrerstown is going to be still 3 classes, which is putting them down at like 18 per class, which is great. That's what everyone wants. But, you know, that's great for Rohrerstown, but then LPC, I just had the number, but if you divide, you could have 5 sections or 5 classes at 25 kids, right? So it's hard to know, like, if we're going to put a firm cutoff, what do we do then when you bump above that cutoff and now you're at like a really underutilized class? Underutilized, I mean, you're looking at like 17, 18 kids per class. So I guess then the other question is, would we entertain saying like, okay, this is our goal, and potentially being up at the limit or just above the limit, but if we're at a certain number, then we're dedicating an aide to that classroom, right? So maybe we're saying the goal is 20 or 22, and if you're 23 to 26, you add an aide, right? That gives our principals and the administration some flexibility for the times when suddenly you're right above that cutoff point.
Well, and to the point,
That does seem like a reasonable suggestion.
again, all of the projections on the far end, the average plus 10, if we go off of the numbers of what we have in 26, if we're in that ballpark, going with an additional 6, every class with the exception to have 20 or 21 at LPO, 15, 15, and then 4 classes of 20 or 21. So you'll be there. That would be the highest. Centerville at that point would have a 15, and then 2 more at 15.
Yeah.
And Mountville would have, 15, 15, and then 16 and a 17. Rohrerstown would have 15, 15, and 1 class of 17.
Yeah, well, for next year, obviously, that, because we're talking about the second full day, but then maintaining half day. I'm talking more longer term, like when everybody's full day, are we going to have, basically, are we putting a hard cap, or are we going to do some sort of soft cap? Or are we going to allow you guys some flexibility to say, like, this is our target, but here's our actual cap?
Yeah. That's the better way to go, because then you can really gauge it year to year, I think. But it also then begs the question, again, depending on the numbers, if you have, I'm going to use Rohrerstown in that example. You have, if say they were at 50, you have your 15, 15, now you're down to 20 kids. You have one section of 20, is that half day, or do you just go full day? Like,
yeah, but then what about me, though?
Well, I know, and that's where
Everyone always asks, "What about me?"
But that's where you start to have just some disparity or inequity between buildings,
Yes.
but it does start to raise the question of it truly is going to be based on the enrollment, and when we hit that enrollment number, like at what point do you do that? And then the following year, are you going to have enough? At some point, the enrollment's either going to go leveled out or it's going to go back. Because right now, the kindergarten enrollment is just a continuous decline year over year of what we're seeing. All signs indicate right now that it's potentially going to keep going down. I'm just looking at birth rate. But we don't know, because there's also a missing piece around move-ins into the area.
And there's also the missing piece of people choosing other options.
Correct. And so when you have the full day, like that's where it is a gamble. But for right now, I think it could work as maybe a little further than what was projected, just listening to everything.
So I guess without us having to continue belaboring this for the next 3 hours, I guess Dr. Dandridge needs a goal, right?
I'll come back with a rework of what a multi-year plan could look like. What I need from the board is some sort of consensus of what you would like to see in that plan. I hear what next year is, right? So
Yeah,
then
is anyone
what would you like to see beyond that?
Is anyone opposed next year to doing another section of full day at every building? Like, is that the next step we want to
This is
take?
a question, not an oppose. Is there a way, rather than adding additional EDK at every building, to just make those extra regular full-day K classes not based on, heterogeneous, thank you so much for that word. Heterogeneous classes, like, have we talked about, is that an option? If so, I think to your concern, how is that decision made?
Having done that in a different district, it's a lottery, and
It's a lottery.
not
It's
fun.
not
It's
good.
not fun, okay.
Right.
No.
Yeah, I can imagine, I just
yeah.
was curious. whether the discussion
Yes.
was had.
I think it makes more sense to families with the screening, to
Yeah.
say that's why my child got the opportunity
Right.
to go full day, if we're doing a phased-in approach. Not saying it's ideal.
Yep, just asking if it was
Yeah.
looked at. Yep.
I think if we can get to the point where you're over the threshold and you start to see now we are like really in working with students who are truly in that where the academic need necessarily isn't there, but now
Right.
you're talking about everything else, then that's when you start to make the tipping point over to let's just go heterogeneous at that point.
Yep.
But hopefully we never get to that threshold, because we'll just have full-day kindergarten for everyone.
Yeah, and let's run the class sizes higher at the high school and lower in the
And we are.
elementary schools.
We are.
So then, sorry that I'm driving this bus, but what do we want to tell Dr. Dandridge is the goal 27, 28? Or do we want to give him a target of what?
I like this idea of more of like a soft cap, that our cap is always 25. We never want to have more than 25 in a kindergarten classroom, and we're aiming down towards 20, but we're like not going to be afraid if we get to like 22 or something like that. I don't, that's just an idea I
Between
had.
20 and 25.
Yeah, I mean, because we get into these, like, if it's just a hard cap, then we end up with inequity across, you know, buildings and what that cutoff looks like and when you split it. So, yeah, I don't know if that's an answer, but.
Mrs. Eshelman's making a face.
Oh, you soft.
I think I'd like to see more discussion around, as those numbers creep up, as you said, to have the flexibility to add those aides in, and that the aides are distributed evenly, not necessarily 1, 2 per building, but an average of 1 per 2 classrooms, so to speak.
All right,
So
I
we
think
kind of have an idea maybe for next year, and then we can come back to you with a couple of our thoughts as to how to progress without necessarily needing kind of where you want us to go. Like, we'll come back with some steps that we can take to kind of keep moving the bus forward to full-day kindergarten for everybody.
That sounds like a wonderful idea, because it's
I
clear
support
that there's
that.
not a consensus yet.
So,
the discussion was helpful. Thank you.
thank you.
Who wants to take a break? Or do we want to push on and finish policy?
How quickly can we move through? There's nothing
Ask that guy.
particularly substantive in any of the changes, are there?
It'll come to no surprise to you, the longest part of the whole next session will actually be Dr. Dandridge's presentation on attendance and admission there for kindergarten.
Thank you, teachers,
can
all
move
of you
fairly
for
quickly.
being here.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Let's take a 3-minute break. 3-minute break. Fast, fast, fast.
Got it. No, I'm sitting here.
real quickly and see if there's any things that anyone needs to discuss as we go.
Right, thank you. So just to bring us back to where we're at, we're moving through the 100s here. We also picked up a couple policies that have came from either PSBA or some legal changes. So if it's okay with the board, judging by the time, if you want to just take a look at 106, 107, and 110 kind of collectively. There was some small changes. Actually, those policies from PSBA are still very similar, basically in every district in the area. We did make some small changes, though, to really be more reflective of our practice, where we don't have a lot of paper instructional guides anymore. You know, we keep all that electronically. It's not stored in the superintendent's office anymore with large filing cabinets. We don't do that anymore, and most schools don't either. So we just basically took those three policies right there, 106, 107, 110, and made them current. Another area that we addressed was in 107. There was some confusing language that it just didn't quite make sense to us, so we cleaned that up and tied that in a little bit more to what we're doing, especially with the elementary and secondary curriculum pieces. And then under instructional supplies, there is a whole language there that you see read out. We had a hard time really understanding what they were saying with that policy. You'll see that language in numerous districts. What we did is I actually just went to the code and pulled the code language for dress in that area and how that actual reference point is directly from the code. And the other piece that I made the adjustment on is the district may charge. So in the past, it wasn't uncommon for districts to charge kids for building anything. Like they build anything, there was some charge racked up. For the most part now, there's some small activities fees. If you're building something, I just always like to use tech ed. If you're building an amazing armoire or something that goes above the materials, you are going to be billed for some of those materials. But it's still a very minimal cost. And at the end, it will not prevent any student from participating. If a student wants to build something, the district has means to handle that so that a student that would like to build something that's above the normal materials cost won't be prevented from doing so by district policy. So we may charge, and we do in some areas, but a lot of areas now are just included. Any questions with those three policies?
Just one quick, all that makes perfect sense. Just one quick question about 106. Will anything about the shall language with the instructional guides cut into the academic freedom of our faculty? Will they still have the discretion to teach the material in the manner that they deem best?
Yeah, it's that broad level.
That's all I need to know.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, and I talked to Dr. Musser about this earlier today. And number 110, I just would like to suggest that in that yellow paragraph of the new language, that the word labs be used instead of shops, I think, because it does come from school code. That's an old term.
It is.
And
It's the term
I'd like
they still
to
use.
update it if we can.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Anyone have any objections to changing shops to labs, even though?
No, and I think it widens
It covers
a lot more FCS, science,
Okay.
theater.
To what?
Labs.
To labs.
Oh, sure.
It's like industrial arts, tech, all those changes. Makes it more.
As long as we can call FCS home ec from now on.
Never.
I don't think that'll be happening. All right, so those three then I do recommend going right to first reading. We'll make those small changes. Policy 112, school counseling, came up as we were working through the 339 plan. We are not recommending any changes for this policy. It is not actually a required policy. There are some districts that don't have a policy. I simply wanted to update the policy from a revision standpoint. It was not rejected on our plan because of it, but it is one of those things. I do like to keep policies that are submitted with plans and tied back to some career pieces. I do like to keep them, if not updated, reviewed at a somewhat timely fashion. So at this point, we're not recommending changes, just a simple review update.
Anyone have any concerns or questions about that? No. All right.
So
Move that to
first reading for 112. 140 is a result of a legal case provided charter school transportation, and that the language has always been in our policy that the district's going to provide transportation. Obviously, when someone says the providing transportation, the leap is that obviously you're providing it at no cost. So they did make that change in the court case that we are providing it free.
but it also made there's a differentiation now in we don't have to provide it exactly the same. So it doesn't have to be identical. So if we want to use a van, we can send a van, we can do different things. It doesn't have to be the exact same transportation mode that is used for our regular students. So those are the only changes in 140, and that is a result of a legal case.
Any discussion on that one? Okay, move that one first reading.
Fantastic. So 221, dress and grooming, is actually a result of the Crown Act, if you're familiar. It's about protective hairstyles. The language that you see in front of you is actually directly from PSBA. It's not so much of a concern for many public schools, as this is a practice that we've been using for a number of years. There are some schools that do have some dress code guidelines and things that are a little more prescriptive and what could be considered discriminatory. So this is a result of the Crown Act. There will be something potentially coming down the line in some other areas, but these are only the changes that we're recommending right now for the student dress code policy.
Any addition or any additional discussion? Great.
And then, as we said before, we're going to have 818 lumped in with our other sexual misconduct and liability policies, which will occur in May, because there may be some potential changes coming down the line for that policy as well. It is quite different than our current policy. It's much more prescriptive. I think it'll put the district in a better spot moving forward from a liability standpoint. And with that said, we'll move to 201 discussion. Dr. Dandridge.
So I need a little bit of direction from the board before we come back with a revision of 201. There are a couple areas that I'd like to have you look at. First of all, and we're talking about our youngest learners, right? Kindergarten, first grade, and what's compulsory. One of the potential gray areas that we have is, as we've said all evening, kindergarten is not compulsory. However, the state of Pennsylvania did make a change several years ago that adds a nuance that kindergarten is not compulsory until you begin kindergarten. Once you begin your kindergarten programming, it now becomes compulsory to you, okay? Where that could be a challenge based on what we currently have written. If you look at our kindergarten section, we have eligible criteria, but then we also say children eligible for admission to kindergarten who move into the district after the first 2 weeks can be admitted, but not after the first school day in October, okay? So now if we have a student at another district who started a kindergarten program and is now bound by compulsory education laws and transfers to us, our policy is saying we shall not admit them into kindergarten because it's after October 1st. Yet we have what would be suggested by the state, the fact that they should be in kindergarten, and we probably shouldn't be denying them that access. So if you are happy with us looking at some sort of revision to that language to recognize those instances, we're happy to bring that back for discussion.
Have we been denying kindergartners?
No. No, it's actually, the way that the language is there too is, that would be for, let's say someone was in Ephrata and they were or another district not participating, and then moved into the district and then wanted to participate. If they're already enrolled into kindergarten, they're being enrolled into kindergarten when they come to us. So it is an area of the policy we do have to update.
And I know there's two sections to this policy, but for this one, I think we should stipulate that they're coming from a Pennsylvania or a public school, because you get into conflict with private schools and other providers that is a kindergarten but isn't necessarily a kindergarten. So I think that is the transfer piece that I think we have to be able to honor.
I don't think this happens all that often. I know there's been a couple of incidents since I've been on the board that I remember. I would just want to, I think whatever we do should give the administration discretion to act in a manner that's in the best interest of each student, and I'd want to see a draft from them that gets us there.
Gives me the direction I need. I think I got consensus from the board. Thank you. Second part of this policy, which has come up in discussions with some of you, is about our entry to kindergarten and or first grade. There are several different ways that districts around this handle that entry. For us, a student must be 5 years of age by the end of August, right? So before September begins. And then that same metric applies in first grade. If you didn't, because kindergarten wasn't compulsory, if you didn't complete it, you got to be 6 years of age by September in order to enter first grade. Some of ours is very black and white. It's either you hit that date or you don't. If you were born on September 1st, I'm sorry, you're after our policy language, so you wouldn't be admitted. There are districts around us that allow for different ways for that to be bypassed. Some of it is by completing a readiness screening. That's been done by a psychologist. That's at a cost to the district, and with me, potentially a recommendation to the superintendent. In first grade, some students go out and complete their own private kindergarten, like Mr. Mercy was just talking about, and whether that counts in order for us to admit them into then a first grade year is a question that we have. Some districts have gotten around that in first grade by, again, going with a readiness measure of some sort, or potentially trying to stipulate what that program might look like. One of the buzzwords that we hear is if you completed an accredited program. The problem with that language is it's typically something used by marketing firms to sell the kindergarten program, not necessarily something approved by the state. So some districts, instead of using accredited, might try and say, well, it's got to complete this many hours and have instruction in these areas. If there is a desire of the board for us to entertain some different measures like that, and so it could be readiness, it could be they completed a program elsewhere before entering first grade. The other thing you can do is you open up a larger window and say, now it's not September 1st, but it's between September 1st and 15th, or 2 months prior that we would allow a student to be considered for first grade. No matter which date you select, you will have the student who is 1 day missing, and those are the families that have the difficult conversations. So I would like to hear from the board what you would like to see in our policy, especially pertaining to first grade entry. Do you want to keep us with the black and white September 1st? If you're not 6, you don't enter first grade. Do you want us to consider completing some sort of readiness screening with psychologists, etc.? Would you like us to consider evaluation of programs if they've completed it outside of Hempfield, or some sort of additional age window? And if you'd like, I can try and answer questions around any of those for you.
Can you talk about drawbacks of doing some kind of readiness screening? You mentioned costs as far as psychologists.
So cost would be one of them, right? Additional costs to the district. 2, some would argue it is still subjective, right? It is based on one individual or 2 individuals, depending on how you structure it, idea of what readiness for kindergarten looks like. Students, especially at that age, have a large range of readiness. We know that, and those learners closes as they get older. So my personal preference is that readiness screener potentially has some concerns for us that might be hard to close, but it is one avenue that many districts take advantage of.
It is an area, and as I shared with some of you, just it was removed by legal because of that subjectivity and opening us up to that, where a date is a date. For as much as we'd like to say that a date is not arguable, there's no subjectivity to it. Anytime you get that screener, you are opened up to additional process and responses afterwards.
And there's always someone with a case whose birth date is the very next day of the deadline you set.
I'm a September 2nd birthday, right here.
Like you're always going to have that.
I went to school early.
And we
probably shouldn't have, so.
I mean, that was the thing, you guys. I should have been really old too. But we shouldn't be incurring more costs to determine if a child should bypass. And that's what we do if we change this policy. And so sticking with a date, it's hard because people are sold, parents are sold on, with private care and private programs that you'll be able to go right into, but you have to look at the policy and you have to look at what's approved. There are highly qualified programs across the state using the STARS program and the STARS evaluation tools, but that's a very different path to go down if there's any kind of option that the board wants to see, then I'd recommend you go there, because it's not us making that determination. It's very objective. Your program is either a state-accredited STARS program or not. And it's a Star 4, that's what you want. That's the highest accreditation that you can get in an early childhood program from a preschool or kindergarten standpoint. But there are no accredited programs or approved programs by the state. Public ed is it. And so sticking with a date of September 1st or the first day of the school year based on the calendar, like, that's the cleanest way to have a non-discriminatory approach to this.
Yeah, I don't support making any changes. I'm recommending we stay with the date. I think it opens us up to a lot of risk and a lot of expense.
And personally, I agree. And I think as we get to full day K, again, the parents will, there will still be some who complain, but okay, you're born September 2nd, you start kindergarten, right? Versus, well, that means I got one more year of childcare, or my kid's really advanced, I don't want them to just be there for a half day, or they've already been doing full day and now they're going back to a half day, right?
I personally agree, especially in kindergarten, that date, especially in a non-compulsory grade level, makes a ton of sense. The questions typically come to us more about first grade. If they've gone out on their dime and have completed a kindergarten program, what is your metric for saying yes or no? We can continue with it's still the date, I don't care what programming you completed, or if you would like us to look at options, we certainly can bring some of those back for a first-person discussion, first reading discussion.
I mean, I personally would be open to, if we're coming from a highly accredited program, for the first grade piece.
Whereas
I'm not living and dying by it, and I'm also okay with just a date.
Yeah, I guess my preference would be the date, even for first grade. And again, it's once we get to full day K, I feel like it's going to be less of an issue because, well, sorry, you're not going to first grade, you're going to kindergarten. I'm not going to be opposed if a majority want to go with a highly accredited, like Mr. Bremirski mentioned. Just not my first choice.
So we can bring back some multiple options there, and we can have some more discussion about this. Again, not a policy that we have to have done tomorrow, next day. We have some time here to get this correct, so it's great.
I have what I need unless anyone else has additional input. Thank you.
All right. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. There is a schedule for upcoming meetings. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Being said, we are adjourned.